The scene opens with two men in a tense standoff. One kneels, defeated, while the other strides forward, his bloodied sword scraping the ground. The standing man chuckles darkly, remarking how ironic it is that even a hero like the kneeling man ended up in such a sorry state. If only he'd stayed safe at home, sipping tea and petting his cat, this tragedy could have been avoided. The kneeling man, Hayden Reich, known as the Fallen Star, pleads with his executioner, Julian. Hayden asks how Julian could betray him like this. Julian smirks, saying Hayden should have treated him better when he was the hero's loyal sidekick. Hayden, desperate, questions if Julian can really kill his master so coldly. Julian's smirk widens into a laugh as he raises his sword high, quipping that it's easier than skipping leg day at the gym. With a swift strike, he severs Hayden's head, and the scene fades to black as a scream echoes. A man clutches his head, freaking out in front of his computer monitor. He's in disbelief, yelling that Hayden's death was pointless, like forgetting to save a game after hours of progress. This man, Lee Say, is the top-ranked player of the game Kill the Demon King, having sunk 100,000 hours into it, probably in-game time, unless he's secretly a time traveler. We learn Hayden Reich was the legendary hero of the Northern Front Line, a demon-hunting genius and the game's noble protagonist. Lee can't fathom why the developers, Framl, would kill off his favorite character, especially when they teased a sequel. He feels betrayed, like ordering pizza and getting a salad instead. Lee rants about canceling his pre-order, furious that Julian, the traitorous villain with slit eyes, a nickname he assumes means sly rather than anything offensive, might be the sequel's protagonist. Comments online speculate the same, but Lee disagrees, calling Julian a backstabber who doesn't deserve the spotlight. He hovers over the cancel button, hesitates, then clicks it, muttering that Kill the Demon King was fun but now feels like a scam. Lying in bed, he grumbles that no other game matches its stunning graphics and vast world, which helped him escape his real-world blues after starting a soul-crushing job. He sighs, picking up his potted plant, his only companion now, joking that he gets why old folks love orchids, they're less dramatic than game developers. As he waters it, a notification pings. It's a message from Framl, confirming he's the guy who's played their game for 5 years straight. Lee wonders if it's an automated reply, like those annoying customer service bots. He responds, and Framl asks if he cancelled his pre-order because he hated the story's twist. Caught off guard, Lee mutters that this sounds like they're dodging his refund, like a shady vendor at a flea market. Another notification arrives, urging him to click a link. He does, and a blinding light erupts from his screen. His glasses fly off, and he's yanked toward the monitor, yelling that he needs to unplug this madness before it eats him like a sci-fi horror flick. He mashes the power button, but it's useless. He's sucked into the screen, tumbling through darkness, wondering if he's falling into the void or just having a really bad day. Suddenly, a wasteland appears below, and he crashes into it, groaning as he recognizes it as the battlefield where Hayden and Julian clashed. Struggling to sit up, Lee spots a scorpion demon charging at him, its pincer snapping like it's auditioning for a monster movie. He realizes it's a creature from the game. A stat window pops up, revealing he's an exceptional swordsman with killer instincts, news to him, since his real-world skills are more about microwave dinners. Screaming, he bolts, but the scorpion's hot on his tail, tearing up the ground like it's got a personal grudge. Lee realizes one hit will turn him into Demon Chow. As it lunges, he braces for death, but the attack doesn't even sting, talk about plot armor. The scorpion swings again, and Lee ducks, gritting his teeth and throwing an uppercut, thinking he might as well go down swinging. To his shock, the beast staggers, and Lee marvels at how light and strong his body feels, like he's suddenly a superhero who skipped the gym but got the powers anyway. Then it hits him, an unseen message from Fremel told him to rewrite the story through character repossession. Assuming he's Hayden, Lee runs from the scorpion, which screeches and leaps. He grabs a sword, plants his feet, and smirks, grateful he's in Hayden's body, the character he's mastered over thousands of hours. He swings, slicing the scorpion nearly in half, killing it instantly and cracking the ground like a bad action movie. "That's wild," he gasps, amazed by Hayden's strength. He thinks he can rewrite the story to save Hayden from Julian's betrayal. A notification dings, informing him he's unlocked the crescent slash, a basic swordsmanship move. Confused, Lee notes this isn't Hayden's skill. Peeling off his hoodie and checking his reflection in the sword, he freezes. Silver hair, poker face, slit eyes, not Hayden, but Julian Kreipart, the Demon King's vessel with immaculate mana control and top-tier sword skills. Lee screams, horrified he's stuck in the traitor's body instead of the hero's, like signing up for a night role but getting cast as the villain. The scene shifts to a lavish estate, where Lee, now fully Julian, stares into a mirror, still reeling. He tries to widen his eyes, joking that they're so narrow he could star in a squinting contest. It's been a week, and despite his efforts, he's trapped in this nightmare, like a gamer stuck in a glitchy VR. He sighs, exhausted, noting one of Julian's traits forces him to speak politely, even if he's cursing internally, a bit like autocorrect making you sound like a Victorian gentleman. Smirking, he admits Julian's pretty handsome, joking that his small head must be why everyone loves him in Korea, whatever that means. The scene jumps to a nervous man, legs shaking like he's auditioning for a jitterbug contest, dreading a meeting with Julian because it feels like walking into a lion's den. He opens a door, calling out to Julian, who recognizes him as Sir Horn, a direct blood relative. Horn asks if Julian's okay, and Julian, playing along, says he's fine, thanks to Horn's help. Horn, relieved, mentions Julian fainting earlier, laughing awkwardly in a way that makes Lee cringe. Both men size each other up. Julian surprised Horn showed up in person, wondering what he's plotting. Horn, noting Julian's calm demeanor, thinks he's no pushover and considers testing him, like a boss checking if you're slacking on the job. The conversation takes a sharp turn as Horn, still jittery, decides to spill some gossip. He leans in, whispering that there's a rumor Julian's lost his memory, like he's a soap opera character with sudden amnesia. Julian raises an eyebrow, joking that it explains why everyone's been staring at him like he's forgotten his lines in a play. It's suspicious, he admits, as the whispers around him have been louder than a bad karaoke night. Horn, caught off guard, wonders if Julian's rattled by the rumor. Julian locks eyes with him, calling out his name in a tone that sends chills down Horn's spine, like he's just been jump-scared in a horror game. Julian asks if Horn buys into the gossip, his piercing gaze making him look like a villain who just stole the hero's lunch money. Horn's heart races, and he stammers that he'd never believe such nonsense, realizing his plan to probe Julian is backfiring faster than a prank gone wrong. In truth, Horn mistakes Julian's menacing vibe for a sign he knows exactly why Horn's here, sent by the Noble Elders Association, no less. With no way out, Horn clears his throat, urging Julian not to take the maid's chatter too seriously, like it's just watercooler gossip. He shifts gears, getting to the real reason for his visit. Despite Julian's recent injuries, the Elders Association sent a message, and Horn's the unlucky messenger. We learn the Elders Association is a snooty group of nobles obsessed with bloodlines, ready to throw a fit if a collateral family member like Julian tries to grab power, like gatekeepers at an exclusive club. Even though Julian's from a side branch, he's loyal to the royal family, practically their guard dog. But his jaw-dropping swordsmanship and magic skills make him a problem for the elders, a thorn they'd love to pluck out faster than you can say, "We're out of coffee." Julian asks what the message is, and Horn hesitates, like he's about to deliver bad news wrapped in glitter. He says Julian must serve as an instructor for the Shut Eyes entrance test. Julian pauses, explaining that Shut Eyes is a big deal, a secretive group handling covert palace missions while doubling as the Royal Guard. It's an elite squad of martial arts superstars, and Julian's already a member. The fact that the elders, who aren't his biggest fans, picked him for this role raises red flags, like getting an invite to a party from someone who hates your guts. Julian wonders if he should even bother with their request. Horn, smirking, says Julian's usually sharp enough to dodge the elders' traps, like a cat avoiding a bath. He scrambles to think of how to convince him. But Julian, throwing a curveball, casually agrees to be the supervisor, leaving Horn so stunned he looks like he's about to glitch out of reality, wondering if he heard right or if Julian's just trolling him. He warns him that the injury is too severe, but Julian insists it's already healed, peeling off the bandage. Hin's eyes widen, realizing Julian means business, and mutters that he's grabbing the bull by the horns. Julian's acting bold, unaware of the stakes, probably trying to win some favor. As Hin moves to leave, unsure of Julian's next move and wanting some space, Julian calls out, "Hold on a sec." Hin freezes, heart racing, wondering if Julian won't let him go. He turns back, and Julian extends a hand, offering a small plant, saying it'll bring him calm. Bro, lurking nearby, looks downright sinister. Hin stumbles out, legs trembling so much he collapses to his knees, gasping in fear. He mumbles that he forgot Julian's chilling nickname, the Smiling Executioner, and now he gets why it fits. Julian lets out a sigh, noting he's handled one issue, all because his room's overflowing with orchids he's trying to offload, something he mentioned in his sleep. He hints that someone's waiting for him, keeping their identity vague, and grabs his blade, muttering that if he's heading out as Julian, he'd be foolish to go unarmed. Plus, he needs to dress the part. Opening his closet, he's taken aback, grumbling that Julian's wardrobe is wild and not his style, but he has to play the role perfectly to avoid suspicion. He steps out, calling to Hin that he's ready and eager for the interview. Julian asks Hin to lead the way and share where it's happening. The scene shifts to a carriage rolling through a forest. Hin explains, as he mentioned before, the Shut Eyes enrollment test will take place on the Vile Academy's training grounds. Julian muses that Vile Academy wasn't a key spot in the game, though it rings a bell. He wonders aloud what it's like, catching Hin off guard since Julian supposedly from the academy. Julian brushes it off, saying it's been a while and things must have changed. Hin nods, adding that revisiting the academy might be risky, especially if someone there remembers Julian from back then. He hopes no one does. The carriage halts, and the driver announces they've reached Vile Academy. Julian marvels at its size, saying he's only seen it in the game. Hin catches this, asking what he just said. Julian laughs, claiming it was nothing. Hin's clearly spooked, while Julian's inwardly panicking, admitting even the game's stunning graphics can't compare to this. Reality feels sharper than any game, no matter how vivid. Hin, though, finds Julian terrifying and wonders what scheme is behind his strange behavior. Julian senses Hin's fear and feels a pang of guilt. He calls out to him, startling Hin further, and says he's free to go, thanking him for the escort. Hin hesitates, saying he's curious about the test since he's already here. Julian raises an eyebrow, noting Hin's eagerness to leave earlier. Something's off, Hin's got a dark vibe hovering over him. Julian wonders if it's mana, but it's not his own power. Maybe it's raw emotion, fear itself. He checks his status window, which reveals his knack for picking up on negative emotions aimed at him. The aura's color confirms it, pure fear. Reflecting, Julian recalls he was always sharp at reading emotions in the game, especially fear. He'd use it to win fights without striking a blow, or stoke anger to make opponents sloppy. This trait explains it all. Hin's sticking around despite his fear, likely because the Elder Association ordered him to watch Julian. Suspicion creeps in, what's their game? Julian's notorious, a problem they'd love to eliminate, especially with rumors swirling that he's lost his memories. Now's their chance to act. But Julian's determined to survive and get back to reality. Someone bumps into him and starts apologizing. Julian looks up, flashing a smile, but his villainous face sends the guy crashing to the ground, screaming. This isn't good, people are whispering, calling him the crazed dog of the royal family, assuming the kid's doomed for crossing Julian. Hin urges Julian to ease up, pointing out the guy's just a kid. Julian hasn't even reacted yet, but he gets it, he hated Julian too for killing his favorite character. He senses the crowd's fear, tinged with anger. Why couldn't Julian have been less of a jerk? It's too much attention. He needs to calm things down. A woman's voice greets him, and he looks up to see her right in his face, startling him. It's Eileen, Eileen Donashin, a main character from the game. She's a vile academy instructor tied to the Adrian Empire's Mage Tower, a prodigy who mastered the metal element at Tier 5 by age 24. She guided Hayden in the academy arc, but why is she greeting Julian? How do they know each other? He rubs his neck, deciding to play along and lighten the mood. But then he catches her aura, not fear or anger, but resentment. What did Julian do to enrage someone like her? As an advanced mage, she's dangerous, and he can't afford to stand out and get killed. He needs to defuse this. Trying to lean into Julian's persona, he asks who gave a halfling like her permission to speak to him. Her resentment flares, but she stays silent, making things painfully awkward. Inside, he's screaming, he didn't mean to say that, and it only made things worse. This is spiraling. He reaches for his blade, asking if her halfling status means she's half-deaf too. Embracing the villain role, he unsheathes his sword, asking if she knows the sound someone makes when they die. When Julian begins to step forward, he begins laughing inwardly, telling her she must be frightened and now he can soothe her. But the reaction is contrary as she begins releasing her mana, inquiring if he's unsheathing his blade, telling him even if it is him, he shouldn't be behaving like this around students and professors. And this is an act of violence against the whole academy, and she will not let him off this. Bro's plan was in the making from the very beginning. He did not even consider it. And naturally, since she detests him, she tells him to get ready as she's not going to be easy to beat. But he wasn't interested in this and he only wanted to frighten her a little bit. Alan acts first by rushing forward, putting hands together to cast some sort of spell. But Julian is able to deflect it with his sword, and he even sends it flying onto the ground, breaking it. He begins to think if they are really fighting at the moment, but she's just angry because he's turning away during their fight. She screams, ordering the students to back off from this place at once. They seem concerned but choose to obey her, and even Hen begins running away wondering what the hell is happening, and he should have left when Julian instructed him to. When she's distracted, we hear Julian laughing and telling her she shouldn't be looking away from him. When he charges in close to her, she erects a magic barrier which he breaks and tells her that looking away during a fight is unsafe. She becomes embarrassed and flustered and sticks her hands out, casting yet another spell, which he has to bob and weave from, and decides to create some space. He explains that those were some scary-ass attacks, and it feels like she's going through her actual emotions. We notice her panicking on the inside because she did not plan on them being deadly, but he dodged all of her attacks, which she had no less expected of Julian. She considered him the perfect noble at one point. As we notice him speaking with a group of other students back at school, and the girls were swooning over him that he's more charismatic than any of the other nobles. And even when she was a freshman was lost by his good looks. She loved him so much and thought he was so handsome and that he was really the best example of a noble. Not only does he have many acquaintances, he is also considered an up-and-coming star of the empire in terms of swordsmanship. As she went on gazing at him in the corridor, she tightened her hold on her book. And she has said that when she glances at him, she becomes filled with hope that the fact she's a collateral line won't be a hindrance. And that Julian's someone she looked up to. And she really thought he could transform society's bias against collateral line people. She couldn't distinguish between respect and how she felt then, as she gave him a love letter. And we could tell her hands were shaking and she got rejected. And it's a central memory she winces about. About hella frequently, just as all of your cringy memories. She gets carried away with her feelings, charging at a strong attack, firing it straight at Julian. He dodges again, but naturally, it would have been hella worse if he hadn't. He tells her that was close and asks why her face is so red and whether or not she's this pissed. But all she needs him to do is hit him once, as that will diffuse her anger. He knows that he needs to begin wrapping things up. He speeds behind her in what feels like seconds, and when she turns it is too late because he hits her on the back of the head with his hilt, but with only a tap, and says they need to cut it out. She keeps blushing and she inquires what the hell he believes he is doing and whether he is looking down on her. He could have killed her if he actually wanted to, because she felt so much mana emitted from him, inquiring why he did not go hard because he did not even use the moonlight sword. He inquires whether she actually wants to know and starts laughing, and she starts to misconstrue, stating that possibly he is finally recognizing her feelings after all this while. And she starts blushing even more. He informs him that it is Hin's first time here and therefore cannot guide him where the training center is located, and the rest are too afraid also to guide him where to go also. And if she knows, then she must pave the way for him. He refers to her once again as a halfling. She knows that her hopes were mere illusions and can't imagine the reason was something so ordinary as this. As Julian begins to walk, he mentions that the moonlight sword is special to Julian. Typically, when you wrap a sword with aura, it glows with light in the shape of an aura around the sword. Julian's sword is different, though. The sword itself transforms into a bluish hue, as if it contains moonlight inside of it. And he had used this sword thousands of times to slay demons. And after seeing this, people named it Moonlight Sword for respect and fear. So, therefore, the sword is the source of power and identity of Julian. So, how could he possibly know how to use it if he's not even Julian? It's a bad sign. That she's already beginning to get it, and this is fairly bad. So, therefore, he must ensure that she doesn't figure out whatsoever. So, therefore, he begins deciding for himself, but Hand and Eileen misinterpret it as him plotting something. He inquires if something is wrong, but both immediately stop, telling him it's nothing. And she keeps him going until they're finally at the training grounds of the academy. He pushes the door open, stating that he hopes everyone is fine, and he apologizes for running a bit behind because Eileen got distracted on her way over. She begins to get irked, but bites her tongue. Julian then approaches them and introduces himself and informs them that he'll be responsible for administering their entrance exam today but is sure everyone knows who he is. Hin looks around inquiring where someone was and notices precisely who he was searching for, stating that this is the second son of the Torso family and he knew that he would turn up. The Torso family are renowned for having had a long-standing friendship with the Kreipart family for a very long time. It's usually considered a great privilege to be linked to the Shut Eyes as they are directly related to the imperial family. However, this comes at the cost that to get in is extremely competitive and the admission test is a tug-of-war between an instructor and the candidate. And in the process, if Julian brings along the second son of the Torso family, the dishonored defeat, the Elders Association will seize this as a chance to humble him. Julian indicates that everyone here appears to want to join the Shut Eyes, inquiring if he is right. They respond, "Yes, sir." And he indicates that all he can see is a collection of cowardly trash. And he begins laughing. He states that they all appear naive, like they have had smooth upbringing. And the decoration they refer to as swords simply makes him chuckle. And the Shut Eyes that they all desire to go into is the bloodiest location here in the Empire. And since they are his seniors, he will provide them with an experience of how it will be. And with that, they will begin the entrance exam now. He grasps his sword, informing them that the acceptance criteria is none other than for them to execute him. They begin panicking at this. He right away begins to cringe at what he has said, informing them that now he's done it, and he only learned just now that the entrance exam is a duel. Horan told him not to hold back the kids. Retreating was what he could do in his battle with Eileen. And if he were to join a sanctioned duel, then it could turn disastrous because everyone would realize that he's actually weak. And because he's not wielding the moonlight sword, they'll believe that it was just a rumor and it never existed or that perhaps he indeed lost his memories. These are things that are likely to happen. As he begins to feel even more pressure from the other students, he's also pressured due to Eileen. If he begins behaving suspiciously, she might begin attacking him as well, which means he may not be able to get out of here. If that happens, the optimal thing to do is taunt them off the bat. He begins shouting, wondering what's wrong with everyone, that it will only stop if he dies or if there are no applicants left. The children begin to look frightened, and no one does anything at all until one of the children puts his hand up hesitantly and states that he forfeits. Many of the other kids begin to do the same, scared, stating that they don't want to be there anymore. The Torso family kid realizes this is wrong and clenches his teeth, but goes along with it because he too ain't want none of that smoke. Horan says there ain't no way this is occurring and all of the kids have now forfeited. Julian begins covering his face laughing. He is proud of himself and turns around, walking past Eileen and Hend and declaring with this the exam is done since there are no applicants left inside. He's ecstatic, claiming that he did it. Just like always, his cruel nature assists him in such circumstances, but he does think about Eileen and whether her fear for him conquered her dislike. But instead she's giving him a very foreign expression to him as he can't sense any negative emotions at all. He wonders what the hell is going on. He starts to think maybe his skill isn't working or if it's even possible for a trait to stop working all of a sudden. She begins chewing her lip, explaining that what he had done reminded her of the past where he stayed out of unnecessary battles by intimidating his enemies rather. He fails to realize he can only see the negative emotions and not the positive ones. A few minutes later, at the closed eyes, Hin begins calling out for Julian. And even gets in front of him, saying that he did well work, but Julian had other thoughts and places his hands on his shoulders, scaring him to have a massive fear. Hand wants to know what the matter is. Julian tells him it's nothing, and it was he who did all the work, but he was just checking whether his talent was still effective. Somebody else hollers at Julian extremely enthusiastically that he was great in there, and Julian inquires as to who he is. He states that he is Lazarus, and he tells him that it's his honor to meet him and he is responsible for the administrative task here, but that the rumor about his losing his memories must have been untrue after all, since he completed the exam without having to wrestle with any of the applicants. Julian is amazed at how much this guy can talk. Lazarus goes on to state that he heard the second son of the Torso family was among the applicants, but even that did not dissuade him from not giving them a soft time and is what is expected of him. Hin then becomes surprised and inquires whether he is attempting to indicate the second son of the Torso family did not pass the test. Lazarus indicates that's not what he meant whatsoever, but Hin is angry, demanding how dare him be so arrogant for someone who's still in training. And he indicates that after knowing the relationship between the Torso family and the Kreipart family, Julian informs him that he's misunderstanding something here. Or perhaps it's the Torso clan that is the one misunderstanding, and that the Shut Eyes won't accept nobles in the first place. Because it's straight under the Imperial clan, they only take commoners or downed nobles. Horan states he's a noble himself though, and Julian reminds him he's a collateral branch of the family. He's a Kreipart halfling. So he is a dog of the Imperial family, not the Kvarts. So that means the second son of the Torso family took the entrance exam in spite of knowing he could not pass the second round of screening. He queries whether the family is attempting to learn their son from experience or something, or the other way around, there was some other plan involved in this entrance exam all along. Horan begins to shake hella bad, questioning if it means that he did indeed know, and that although he knew it was a trap and that he was aligned with them, that he still let him tag along. But Julian insists there's no way that can be, and perhaps it was just an easy misunderstanding. But Hen won't even look at him anymore. And Julian says otherwise it would be unfortunate for him. A little later, he goes back to his mansion and the maids begin to greet him, saying welcome home. And as he passes by, they ask if he will be dining, but he replies no. And then reminds them not to allow anybody into his office. The maids agree. And the moment he enters his office, he places his sword on the table and lets out a great big fat sigh, saying that based on Hin's reaction a while ago, it seems like the Elders Association actually connived something for this after all, and he was fortunate enough not to get caught by anyone today, but he suspects how long his good fortune will continue. And at some point or another, the association actually would notice his shortcomings, and that would mean that he would be expelled from the family. He then gazes down upon his blade and states the fact that he proved he was unable to handle the moonlight sword truly troubles him, but it would be something that would be worth fighting with because it would mean he'd be able to overpower others. And if so, as he tightens his hold on the blade, he states that it may actually be worth a shot to unlock the moonlight sword's power while he is able to. He keeps drawing out the blade and then starts to examine it. The aura disappears off of it in a matter of seconds, and all that remains is his reflection, and he states that it is just as he expected. It won't turn on. The ability that Julian possesses as a great swordsman does not give him any issue with swordsmanship itself. When he holds the sword, the trajectory of the sword becomes very apparent to him. While he's checking his stats, the great swordsman ability basically states that he's been able to wield a sword from birth. If it's a sword, no matter what kind, he can use it. But this is not quite enough for him to use the moonlight sword proper. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of named characters, never mind the countless people in the Empire who are just as good as him. Not just as good as him, but rather as good as the real Julian in terms of swordsmanship. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of named characters alone. But the contrast between them and Julian is stark. There is a preponderance of disparity in skill for doing aura or man use. That's why he was able to get by with a pathological thinking process. And he asks himself if there is actually no hope for him to do it at the moment. If the mana were to travel in the opposite direction, his vital organs might get ruined because controlling mana is extremely risky. He's reluctant but thinks there's no other option but for him to perform it since he needs to prove himself at some point. If the idea of mana in the game within this world are the same, then he who has been playing it for so many hours now already knows the way. As he begins to focus his mana, he mentions that he must utilize the saved-up bit in his heart and transmit it into the mana meridian. Of the 38 mana meridians, 6 are significant gray veins. And of those, the head's great vein is the concentration of mana that serves as a bridge between his heart. So if he were to turn on this area, it would all be he needs. Something then breaks within him. And when he opens his eyes, the aura begins to emanate out from him and he can sense it. As it's surrounding his body, he grips his sword tighter, speaking about how he just needs to move it to another location, which would be his blade. But since he's doing his best, the resistance is much stronger than he anticipated. But he knows this body can do it. And after some fumbling, it proves to be a success. Sort of because it did not last long at all. He assures that while it has manifested itself, it is still weak. He tells him if he compared it to the moon, it would still be a crescent. But at least. The moon at least appeared, and that's not too bad. The following day in the training grounds, he spreads his stance and begins to unsheath his sword and at once cuts 3 training dummies in 2 with the moonlight sword. And as they begin to fall apart, we're seeing it glowing on his blade. He claims at least to have gotten to the level of a knight. Took only a day, damn. Now he just needs to finish his moonlight sword, but his game knowledge is running low and he needs someone who knows him instead. Julian, since he needs to go ask them for recommendations. One of the maids shouts after him, letting him know that he has a visitor. He is curious if Julian ever had any friends, but this is just the timing. It's none other than Lazarus, who addresses him, and he realizes he was totally mistaken because it's only the tier 1000 yapper. Lazarus is simply taken aback that he got his name right and says surely it cannot be due to his attitude yesterday. Julian wants to know how Joachim is supposed to forget someone who talks so much damn, and who knows, maybe he's fearless or stupid. So he asks him what does he do here. Lazarus replies that it's easy and he came with an order from the commander to check the results of the entrance exam which was conducted at the academy yesterday from him. Julian is perplexed and states that he believed he saw the results himself. Lazarus indicates that obtaining the results from the interviewer and passing them on are procedure. Julian indicates that sure is quite inefficient and it sounds like they are simply getting him to do busy work. He states to inform that there are 0 passes on the entrance exam. Lazarus informs him that he will let the commander know right away, but Julian hesitates because he knows something, instructing Lazarus to wait. Assuring him that he's going straight to the commander from here, Lazarus says yes. Julian informs him that he wants to do it himself. Afterwards Lazarus asks him if he is serious. Julian replies in the affirmative and they can walk to his carriage together and he will drive him there. Lazarus begins to get some anxiety, inquiring as to if he maybe did something wrong, stating this is clearly due to yesterday. Julian tells him no, and he's only being thoughtful because he thought that he would be uncomfortable returning by himself and that Julian needed to have lived a more compassionate life. But since things have progressed so far, he should go seek his counsel. And he is confident that the commander is familiar with Julian well. And he will ensure that the Crypt family can never plot anything when Shut Eyes is tied by speaking up. It leaps to the headquarters as a man bursts through a door informing the commander there is an issue. The commander inquires what it is since it has to be something important. The guy informs him that he himself has arrived and the commander inquires who he is referring to. He informs him that it is none other than Julian who has arrived in person. The commander begins to roll his chair back slightly, inquiring if he is sure at all that it is Julian. It cuts to the Adrathan Imperial Palace. Julian remarks that he never imagined that he would see this place with his own eyes. The continent of Rosinda serves as the primary setting of the game and is controlled by 3 large countries. The most powerful of the 3 would be the Adrathan Empire, where Julian happens to reside. Following the sealing of the demon god Barbados, the ruined nation slowly came together under a powerful monarchy which became a superpower. And the emblem of that strength is this magnificent palace before him. Inside, he is freaking out, declaring that this is so crazy. But naturally, he maintains a poker face. Lazareth is wondering why the hell he's laughing maniacally as he finds him intimidating. He's also genuinely worried. Under normal circumstances, the only means of accessing him would have been through his servants, yet now he wishes to report directly to the captain of the Shut Eyes, and he even took someone like him with him, and he does not know what his intention is. Other individuals see Julian too, commenting that it's strange that he's here alone, and they believed he was hurt, but he's fine, so perhaps the rumor about the memory loss was simply not true. Lazareth comments that this is a tremendous privilege, but he's worried he'll pass out at any moment. And Julian remarks that the palace is really impressive. Lazareth is puzzled as to why he's bringing that up, as Julian goes on saying that as this is the first gate that all people can approach, the captain would then be beyond the locked second gate. Lazareth affirms that indeed this is so, but he asks him why he's telling him these things as this is general knowledge. He begins to develop a misunderstanding in his mind, stating that this is none other than a test. Due to his face all condescending, it is as if he is trying to tell him that an inept trainee such as himself is to be tested once more. And if he does not guide him well, he might get expelled. But naturally, Julian comments that he doesn't know if it's due to his own field of vision being broader than in the game, but he can't even locate the Shut Eyes building. He asks Lazareth what is wrong and if he perhaps is not well. Lazarus replies not at all. He's perfectly well as it's important in the group. Julian is thinking about what else could be wrong with them, but they drive on through the gates and Julian tells them they're here. Lazarus asks him if he passed. But naturally, Julian doesn't have a clue what he's discussing. Lazarus explains that he thought that was a test and Julian tells him not at all, wanting to know why on earth he would need to test him. Lazarus explains that this implies that he's already a trained member of the Shut Eyes. Julian only asks himself why he isn't responding to his question while Lazarus begins bowing to him, explaining that if he would excuse him for a minute, then he flees singing. Julian states that he sure is an odd individual and he isn't certain if he should have, and he should be stating this as the imposter Julian. A man comes over to him and tells him that the captain invited him in. Julian states that it's time for him to finally go get his boss. We then find out that the captain's name is Odwin Baladar and he is the last of the fallen Baladar family. Odwin's leadership and strength are well over enough to qualify him as a captain. He is the only one who can coordinate and command the members of the Shut Eyes who take orders only from the imperial family, and he's thinking about how charismatic he'll be because it's making him really a bit nervous. He stands before the door and knocks and asks if he can come in. He is told to come in by a woman, and when he comes in, we get to see a small girl sitting on the chair working on papers. She greets Julian saying that it has been long. It turns out that Odwin is female. She informs him that she was informed he got injured, requesting to know if he's okay. Julian is baffled, stating that he wasn't really all that interested in the Shut Eyes, so he didn't have a clue, but that she is incredibly small, really quite a bit at that. She is a little girl. He recalls the captain having a smaller body, but he never imagined that it would be this bad, and that rather than a woman, she would be closer to a teenage girl. She then points her finger at him, stating that he was going to tell her that she's small again. He replies, of course not, but in his heart says that because she had known what he was thinking, then she knows him well. Odwin inquires about his wound, stating she needs a report. Julian is thinking about what he should say and that he should be careful about what he does say in front of her because in the worst scenario, she might suspect him. And although he's Julian, for that matter, he should be respectful to the captain. Since he's so obedient, he's almost their dog. He then makes up his mind to go with it, first thanking her most of all for her concern, telling her that it was no light injury, but that it wasn't enough to thwart his loyalty to the Empire. She's perplexed and he is unsure if perhaps he spoke badly. She begins to consider it for a moment, then places her hands on the desk and walks over towards him, stating that something is not quite right, asking if he has always spoken like this. She then raises her sword up in front of him directly under his chin, stating that he feels like an outsider.
A dimly lit office, thick with tension, where every word feels like it could spark a fire. Commander Odwin stands tall, her sword gleaming, pressed just under Julian Kreipart's chin, or rather, Lisa, trapped in his body, playing a dangerous game. Odwin's eyes narrow, her voice sharp. I can tell something isn't right. Julian's thoughts darken. This is it. The color of injustice. The moment suspicion could unravel everything. A glowing panel flashes, the words "the color of injustice" pulsing like a warning. Lisa, in Julian's body, grips their head, muttering, how did the original Julian treat his superior before? On impulse, they seize the blade, leaning closer with a chilling smirk. Shall we begin like a proper villain would, they say, locking eyes with Odwin? Is there any problem here? Odwin blinks, caught off guard, then lowers her sword and strides to her desk. It's rare for someone to visit the main headquarters of the Shut-Eyes in person, she says. Most instructors submit their reports and leave without a word. That's how it's always been. She pauses. You've suddenly become responsible. Julian stands rigid, mind racing. If this was the real Julian, he'd know better than to blur personal opinion and protocol. They've underestimated him. Stepping forward, they say, although Julian has been recovering from an injury, I came to deliver the report personally. Odwin nods. Is that so? Julian's eyes flicker with unease. Channel Julian's composure. Boldly, they add, are you also planning to regulate who comes through the door now? Odwin's cool gaze cuts through them, her thoughts clear, he's already showing rebellion. How typical. She says, I'd heard you were in poor condition due to the injury, but now you appear just fine. Julian swallows irritation, thinking, anyone who speaks to Julian's face without flinching isn't ordinary. There's something unique about Odwin. She sits and demands the report. Julian hands it over. Flipping through, she asks, anyone of note from the recent recruitment test? No, Julian replies flatly. Odwin sighs. I expected as much. You trained under the sword Saint Haydenreich. Ordinary talent means nothing to you. She presses, not even one candidate worthy enough to consider as an apprentice? No, Julian repeats. Odwin looks up, stunned. You truly haven't selected anyone? Julian confirms it, feigning innocence. Her composure shatters. Why, she demands, voice low and dangerous. Silence. Why, she repeats, louder. She shoots up, slamming her hand on the desk, shouting, your decision makes no sense. Have you lost your mind? Julian stands still, thinking, this is the outburst I expected. Odwin's fury grows. The Shut-Eyes are already suffering from a severe shortage of capable members. Even one decent recruit could have made a difference. Julian's heart pounds, but her commanding presence, even in anger, is undeniable. We can't accept just anyone out of desperation, they say. All the applicants this time were unqualified to serve in the shut-eyes. Odwin slams her fist again. If you had at least appointed someone as an apprentice and tested them under supervision, there was a chance one of them could have proven useful. Julian counters, it would have been a waste of time. None met the standards of an apprentice. Inside, they admit they dodged that fight. Nonsense. Odwin snaps, screaming, get out immediately. Julian chuckles. I have a proposal to offer before leaving. Her eyes narrow. What absurdity are you going to throw at me next? Julian pulls a folded letter from their coat, placing it on her desk. Odwin glances at it. What is this? I took the liberty of organizing my thoughts on the flaws in the recent recruitment process, Julian says. I arranged them through simulated sparring sessions. Odwin picks up the letter. What kind of problems did you find? All the candidates lacked a proper understanding of what it means to join the shut-eyes, Julian says. They showed no real sense of alertness or readiness. Odwin stares, her expression unreadable, the tension hanging like a blade. A dimly lit office, the kind where shadows cling to the walls like secrets. The commander sits at her desk, her fingers tracing the edges of a letter that's just been handed to her by Julian, her second in command. The air feels heavy, like it's waiting for something to break. She reads the words again, her mind echoing them, unreadable. She lets out a low murmur, almost to herself, so that was it. This isn't just some routine proposal. No, it's too sharp, too deliberate. She looks up, her voice steady but laced with realization. It makes sense, she says aloud. Applicants should understand the nature of the organization they're attempting to join before they even attempt to pass the test. Her eyes drop back to the letter, and as she reads further, her breath catches. The words are blunt, brutal even. The document spells it out, anyone taking the shut-eyes recruitment test does so at their own peril. Injury, death, none of it falls on the organization. Her head snaps up, eyes locking onto Julian. Her voice spikes with disbelief. It sounds like you intend to make this more than just a recruitment test, she exclaims. Do you mean to conduct the test with lethal intent? Am I understanding this correctly? Julian doesn't answer. Instead, a cold, measured laugh spills from him, filling the room like a chilling wind. It's not a denial, and that silence speaks louder than words. The commander's eyes narrow, her thoughts racing as she points at the letter. No answer. That's confirmation enough. This is strange. Julian, second only to her in the shut-eyes, has never meddled with internal policies like this before. Never challenged the way things are done. She mutters to herself, barely audible, yes, that's exactly what it looks like. Leaning forward, she rests her head in her hand, her tone teetering between annoyance and disbelief. You declined to select a candidate in the recent test because you feared you might be held accountable if any of them were injured? Julian's grin is infuriatingly casual. Partly due to that concern, he admits, and partly because those who managed to pass such a flawed test would have been utterly useless anyway. The commander goes quiet, her mind scrambling for a comeback but finding none. Julian doesn't let the silence linger. He presses on, his voice cutting through. It would be a disgrace to tarnish the name of the shut-eyes with mediocrity. After all, aren't we an extension of the imperial family itself? That name, imperial family, hits like a spark. The commander's patience snaps. I understand, she cuts in, repeating it twice, sharp and final, like she's slamming a door shut. With a frustrated groan, she adds, whenever the topic of the imperial family comes up, you always have more to say. She steadies herself, her voice firm again. I'll submit the proposal to the council, she declares, but I can't guarantee it will be approved. Julian bows slightly, his hand over his chest in a gesture that feels almost mocking in its formality. "Thank you," he says. "I'll take my leave." But as he turns, the commander's voice stops him cold. "Wait," she calls out. "I heard a letter arrived from the Royal Secretariat. Addressed to your office. Go check on it." Julian pauses, glances back with a faint smile, and nods. "I understand," he says simply, then slips out of the room. The commander watches him go, her gaze lingering until the door clicks shut. Alone now, she looks down at the letter again. The words burn into her mind: the shut eyes will not be held responsible for any accidents. She leans back in her chair, lost in thought. If someone dies during the test, they're covered by royal decree. It's legal, clean. The shut eye's nature hasn't changed, only fallen nobles and unaffiliated commoners can apply. People with no power, easy to sweep under the rug. It's worked so far. But her thoughts circle back to Julian. He knows all this, of course he does. So what's his real game here? It hits her like a jolt. He's figured out the test was rigged. The Elder Council, the Torso family, they've been pulling strings, and this is his counterstrike. He's sending a message, one that'll shake the council with the same ruthless tactics they've used against him. She stands abruptly, her voice sharp. "Is anyone outside?" A soldier steps in, saluting crisply. "I'm here," he says. She hands him Julian's letter. "Deliver this to the council," she orders. He nods firmly. "I understand." He takes the document and leaves, the room falling back into heavy silence. The commander sits again, exhaling slowly. Her mind drifts to Julian, to how he's changed since that brutal injury. He used to be the Empire's loyal hound, the royal dog, obedient, emotionless, always following orders. But now? She feels a weight settle in her chest. Something's shifted. The leash is gone. The beast is moving on its own, carving out its own will. She frowns, muttering to herself, he's different now. A tense atmosphere hangs over the Shy headquarters, where secrets and suspicions lurk in every corner. A woman, sharp and wary, knows she's got a problem on her hands, a big one. She's got to keep her eyes glued to him, whoever he is, because trouble's brewing, and it's only a matter of time before it spills over. The scene shifts, and we're with Julian, who's just made it to his new office in the heart of the Shy headquarters. He's muttering to himself, "I actually made it all the way to my office in the Shy headquarters." Private offices are rare for agents like him. Usually, they're out in the field, always on the move. So when he learns the organization went out of their way to give him this space, he can't help but wonder aloud, just how absurdly extravagant it must be. He pushes open the door, and his jaw practically hits the floor. The room's a chaotic mess of lavish dresses and creepy decorations, like someone tried to cram a royal wardrobe and a haunted house into one space. There's an overwhelming number of luxury items that have absolutely nothing to do with work, he says, shaking his head. This place is even worse than my own house, which is saying something. He's blunt, calling it like he sees it. I must be dealing with someone truly unhinged. Everything in here screams money, but it's gaudy, tasteless, like a fever dream of bad choices. Julian's not impressed. "I can't bring myself to like the room's original occupant," he says. "The person clearly has atrocious taste." As he steps further in, his foot catches on something, and he groans, the guy must be a hoarder. Before he can dwell on it, a knock at the door snaps him out of his thoughts. "Enter," he calls, and in walks Lazarus, a young guy with a nervous energy that fills the room. "I have come to deliver a letter from the imperial family," Lazarus says, holding out an ornate envelope. Julian takes it, muttering, "This must be the letter the captain had mentioned earlier." Lazarus turns to leave, but Julian stops him. "Wait," he says, a sly grin creeping onto his face. "The timing is perfect. I need the sculptures loaded onto the carriage I arrived in. They shouldn't be heavy." Lazarus's face twists into panic. You really mean all of them? He asks, disbelief dripping from his voice. I can't believe I've been handed another task. At this rate, I probably won't remain a trainee for long. He tries to pull himself together, assuring Julian, I'll begin moving them right away. Julian watches, puzzled, and mutters, why's he making such a weird face? As Lazarus hefts a treasure chest, he stumbles right into a creepy doll statue and faceplants, clutching the chest like his life depends on it. Julian stares, dumbfounded. The kid really is a handful, he says. But before he can say more, Lazarus leaps to his feet, unsheathes a sword, and presses it to his own throat, blurting, I can't believe I messed up in front of you. Julian's eyes widen. There's no need for that, he says quickly, trying to defuse the situation with a dry laugh. If you died here, the real hassle would be cleaning up the mess. Keep moving the stuff. Lazarus doesn't crack a smile. Okay, he says, his voice flat and grim. Julian shakes his head, muttering, he's probably terrified because of the body I'm currently in. It's understandable. He turns his attention to the letter, its imperial seal gleaming, addressed directly to Sir Julian with ties to both his family and the shut eyes. He schemes it, relieved he can read the language. If I've recovered, I'm expected to return to duty, he summarizes, then scoffs. They're clearly trying to work me to death, though they've sugar-coated it well. He's not one to complain, though. Gaining real-world experience is crucial now, he thinks, especially since he's still hunting for clues about the moonlight sword. The letter assigns him a mission, restoring a resonant stone. He explains, almost to himself, in the game, the world is plagued by demons, entities born from the remnants of the demon god Barbados. After Barbados's death, his essence either corrupted the living or formed monstrous creatures. To fight them, humanity relies on resonant stones, ancient artifacts forged with mana from the age of mages. Anyone who could forge stones using mana is incredible, Julian marvels, but since he's no mage, he figures he'll be guarding whoever is. It's risky, sure, but if he pulls it off, it might finally quiet the rumors swirling around him. I wonder who the mage in charge will be, he says aloud. Handling resonant stones requires serious magical skill, so I just hope it's someone competent. The scene cuts to Eileen, stretching in the grand halls of the Imperial Palace, her frustration bubbling over. I'm still being forced to write reports even after earning the title of professor, she grumbles. Constantly proving oneself seems to be the mage's eternal burden. She feels the imperial family's demands are pushing her to the limit. A tap on her shoulder pulls her out of her thoughts. What are you doing here? A familiar voice asks. It's Diana, and Eileen's face lights up. It's been far too long, she says warmly. How are you doing? Diana teases, you must be drowning in work now that you're the youngest professor. It's become hard to even run into you. Eileen laughs it off. You don't need to flatter me, she says. Diana invites her to a tea party, but Eileen declines. I have to work on my thesis, she explains. Diana smiles, nostalgic. You're as diligent as ever, she says. This reminds me of our student days. Nothing about you seems to have changed. But then Diana's gaze shifts, noticing something off in Eileen's expression. Before she can press further, something catches her eye. That's Julian's carriage, she says, pointing. Eileen turns, her eyes narrowing. You're right, she confirms, and the air grows heavy with unspoken questions. A crisp afternoon, tension thick in the air. Eileen's clutching a family crest, her eyes narrowing. It's Julian's, she says, no doubt in her voice. Diana smirks, picking up the edge in her tone. I heard he was on the verge of death not long ago. Persistent, isn't he, showing up already? Eileen frowns. I agree, she mutters, betraying more than she means to. Diana leans in, teasing but sharp. This must mean what I think it means. Do you still have feelings for him? Eileen's quick to deny it, cheeks flushing. I have no idea what you're talking about. Diana laughs. You used to be such a sweet girl. Remember that rumor? The one about confessing under the cherry tree, how you'd never be rejected. And how you actually called Julian there and did it. Eileen cuts in, desperate to pivot. We should go to the tea party together. Diana raises an eyebrow. Didn't you say you were busy? Eileen's laugh is awkward, forced. I just realized I have a bit of free time after all. Her face is crimson. Diana chuckles. No need to be embarrassed. Everyone liked Julian back then. Eileen nods, voice soft. Diana's right. Her mind drifts. He really was a different person before. That all changed after he returned from the Northern Front and joined the Shut Eyes. His attitude, his energy, he's not the same man anymore. Diana's practical. You should just go and say hello. Eileen snaps back, just because I used to like him doesn't mean I still do. There's no need for me to see his face. Not anytime soon. Diana's curious. Why? Eileen doesn't answer with words. Her hand rises, magic crackling around her fingers. A sealed envelope appears, glowing faintly. Diana's eyes widen. A letter from the Imperial family. Eileen nods grimly. I've been assigned a mission. I'm in charge of the restoration of a resonant stone. Diana's look says it all, she knows what kind of dangerous job that is. The scene shifts. Knights march in tight formation, whispers buzzing. So many troops, one says. Are we meeting someone important? Another answers, even the Blue Lion Knights are with the Shut Eyes on this one. I heard Sir Julian himself will be there. The first knight's impressed. Didn't they say he lost parts of his memory after an injury? His friend scoffs. Probably just gossip from people who hate him. Someone like Julian, with his reputation? No way a mere wound takes him down. Julian overhears, a faint smile on his lips. Taking this mission was the right call. Public opinion shifting in my favor. Two knights approach, Fern and Heinrich, Blue Lions, all polish and smiles. The Blue Lions are still as dependable as ever, Julian says, guarded. They nod. Our priority is safely escorting the mages. Julian's eyes narrow. There's no predicting what might happen out there, he says, laughing, not from humor, but unease, demons haunting his thoughts. His intensity throws them off, and they laugh nervously, misreading him. Fern speaks up. What if you rode in the carriage to Jylin instead of marching with the escort? Heinrich agrees. It'd help us manage security more effectively. Julian pauses, seeing through it. The Blue Lions, noble to the core, want to keep a branch family member like him out of the spotlight. He sighs inwardly. In most novels, people in another world live grand lives. But here I am, the villain in someone else's story, boxed in by class politics. Still, a carriage beats scheming nobles' chatter. Fern and Heinrich take his silence as agreement. Glad we worked through that misunderstanding, they say. Then, everything changes. She steps forward, composed, commanding. The weather is beautiful today, she says, greeting everyone, her full titles rolling out as she declares, I'm in charge of the resonant stone restoration. Her eyes meet Julian's, and her breath catches. Julian freezes. Maybe the carriage isn't the best idea after all, he says quickly. Eileen's face flushes. Why is he here? She knows he's avoiding her. Julian's mind races. She's unpredictable. Difficult to deal with. Not knowing what she's thinking, it unnerves me. Fern and Heinrich swap confused looks, whispering. What's with Julian's sudden reversal? Fern's jaw clenches, suspicion flaring. He caught on to my plan to sideline him. Grudging respect mixes with irritation. He's the type to survive the imperial court's cutthroat politics without picking a side. But his pride stings. Just a collateral branch member. How dare he act like this? Arrogant, just because the royal family favors him. Julian's stuck in a creaky carriage, the kind that sways just enough to make you queasy, and across from him is Eileen. Neither of them wants to be there. You can feel the tension, thick as fog, as they avoid each other's eyes. Julian's muttering to himself, just get this mission done fast. No mess, no drama. He's determined to keep it clean and professional, anything to steer clear of her after this. The carriage finally rattles into Jylin, a speck of a city that barely feels like one. Julian steps out, squinting at the place. This city is ridiculously small, he grumbles under his breath. Fern and Heinrich shoot him sharp glares, like he's just insulted their hometown. He doubles down, scoffing, we came all the way from the capital, and there's not even a proper welcoming party. A local man steps forward, breaking the awkward silence. His face lights up as he recognizes them. Thank you for making the trip, he says warmly to Julian, offering to lead them straight to the resonant stone. They follow him through narrow streets to a towering clock tower, where shards of glowing stone hover in the air, eerie and unnatural. Eileen takes over, her voice sharp as she directs the group to place boxes and supplies in precise spots. I'm very sensitive to mana, she says, and this needs to be exact. The local man steps closer, asking, would you like to examine the damage? Eileen nods, and they approach the base of the tower together. The crystal there is a mess, deep cracks splinter through it like veins. She frowns. The damage is too extensive for standard repair, she says. A partial replacement is necessary. The man's face tightens with worry. Eileen reassures him, the barrier will temporarily vanish during the procedure, but it won't take long. He nods, hesitant but trusting her. I trust your expertise, he says. She rolls up her sleeves, her fingers glowing faintly as they touch the stone. Initial preparations are complete, she announces. But now she has to tell Julian the barrier's about to drop. She winces at the thought of facing him again. Come on, you're a professor now, she tells herself, straightening up. Julian, she calls, I have something important to tell you. He's already walking away, dodging her like she's a plague. Frustration flares. She raises her voice, listen to me. It's not just personal, it's vital to the mission. She catches up, grabbing the edge of his uniform. This is too much, she snaps. We're supposed to be professionals on official duty. I have to know, why do you keep avoiding me? Julian deflects, cool as ice. When did I ever do that, he says, then flips it on her. You're the one constantly following me. His tone's so calm, so matter-of-fact, it almost sounds true. Eileen stumbles over her words, flustered. Something is seriously wrong with you, she says, but the worst part is somehow you still manage to make it sound logical. She tries to refocus. Whatever you're saying isn't the point right now. He raises an eyebrow, dripping sarcasm. What is, then? Before she can answer, he cuts in, you're acting like a stalker. Her expression darkens. I've been holding back, she says, voice low, but this is getting ridiculous. I can't believe you're actually saying this. Before they can tear into each other further, a scream rips through the air raw, panicked, deafening. They freeze. Someone shouting with every ounce of their being, a demon is here. Julian's face drains of color. Eileen spins toward him. This is exactly what I was trying to tell you earlier, she says, her voice sharp with urgency. The barrier would drop, and demons would appear, but you just kept dodging me instead of listening. Another scream, then a sickening crash. Heinrich flies past them like a broken puppet, slamming into a wall. His armor crumbles, and he slumps, motionless. Julian stares, his heart sinking. A cold dread twists in his gut. Based on the pressure I'm feeling, he says, voice shaking, we're up against a two-horned demon. He repeats it, like he can't believe it himself. 2 horns. This wasn't supposed to happen. This is seriously bad, he mutters. Eileen rushes to his side. What's happening, she asks, but Julian snaps, stay back. It's not safe. She looks up, and there it is, a hulking beast at the center of the chaos. Her breath catches. I can't believe it, she says. A demon this powerful, here of all places. It doesn't make sense. Her hands tremble as panic sets in. I don't know any combat spells, she admits, and the resonance stone isn't operational yet. Her mind races, grasping for options. The demon mutters in an ancient, enchanted tongue. Shadows pour from its body, spawning ghoul-like creatures. One drops right in front of Eileen. Julian steps forward, sword flashing, cutting it down in a single, clean strike. Letting your guard down like this is reckless, he says, his voice hard. Someone like you, who can be rattled by something so minor, is clearly too naive. He straightens. I'll handle things here. Your job is to do what only you can. Eileen blinks, stunned. What do you mean, she asks. He points at her. You're responsible for restoring the resonance stone. That's your mission. Mine is to protect you. His eyes narrow. Has the situation shaken you so badly that you've forgotten what we came here to do? She snaps out of it, realizing he's right. She bolts toward the stone, shouting, it'll take 7 more minutes before the stone is ready. As she runs, she glances back and calls out, Julian, I'm begging you don't get hurt. I can't use healing magic. He responds, cool as ever, getting injured in a situation like this would be difficult for me. But the words feel hollow. He's lying to himself, and he knows it. Terror gnaws at him. A 2-horned demon, this early in his fieldwork? He never saw it coming. Retreat isn't an option, not now. A battlefield cloaked in shadow, the air thick with the stench of demons and the hum of magic. Julian stands there, heart pounding, knowing running isn't an option. Too many eyes are on him. If he bolts, the rumors will spread like wildfire. He steadies himself, thinking, if this were the real Julian, this would be nothing. He'd already be tearing through them. Then, like a storm breaking, Fern bursts onto the scene, shouting, Julian, hold back. Let the Blue Lion Order handle this monster. His unit charges in, blades flashing with military precision, cutting down lesser demons like they're carving through butter. Fern's voice booms over the chaos, we'll keep chipping away until the big one drops. He throws a mocking glance at Julian, smirking. What's wrong? Frozen from fear? This doesn't feel like Julian at all. Julian chuckles, low at first, then louder, more confident. That's exactly right, he says, his voice carrying a strange edge. Fern stares, confused, as Julian's laughter grows, echoing over the battlefield. Why the hell is he laughing now? Fern wonders. Julian's mind races, this is my life now. If I'm really Julian, fear doesn't belong here. This is the battlefield. This is where I thrive. The demon lunges, its massive arms swinging like a wrecking ball. Julian's aura erupts, a blaze of raw power. His unique trait, exceptional swordsman, kicks in, and he moves like lightning. He leaps, blade drawn, slicing through the demon's hand in a clean arc. The shockwave ripples up its arm, and the beast roars. Fern gasps, stunned. Impossible. No one should be able to cause that much damage with a single strike. Julian doesn't hear him. He's lost in the fight, blood splattering his face as he grins through it. I'm glad, he says, almost to himself. It means this will work. He charges again, launching skyward, aiming for the demon's horns. His blade flashes, cracking one horn, a chunk spiraling through the air. He's all in now, adrenaline pulling him deeper into the moment. But the demon's not done. Its eyes lock onto him, and a fist the size of a boulder slams into Julian's chest. He's sent flying, crashing into the dirt. Blood spills from his mouth, every nerve screaming. I can't even breathe, he gasps, then admits, maybe, just maybe, I overestimated myself. But there's no time to doubt. The demon's eyes flash, and it raises both arms, slamming them down to crush him. Debris explodes, clouding the air. The Blue Lion Knights freeze, one whispering, was Julian defeated? Fern steps forward, voice firm. There's no way Julian could have taken down a two-horned demon by himself. He's ready to take charge, but a soldier's cry cuts him off, pointing through the dust. Look! Fern follows his gaze and stops cold. Julian emerges from the chaos, his silhouette sharp against the fading magic and shadow. His sword, once dull, now pulses with a strange blue aura. Whispers ripple through the soldiers, the moonlight sword. Only Julian knows it's a fake, a flawed imitation of the legend. It may not be even half as powerful as the real deal, he mutters, but for now, it'll serve. With a manic grin, he charges, laughing as he surges toward the demon. The beast snarls, cackling back, and lunges. Julian sidesteps effortlessly, taunting, fast for something so huge. But I've already memorized your movements. He announces, I'm going to try a new ability. Trait of Insight. The demon unleashes a flurry of strikes, but Julian's eyes narrow, seeing every path before it lands. He weaves through left, right, duck, pivot like a dancer dodging death. The Blue Lion soldiers erupt, one shouting, it's like watching a masterclass in survival. Fern, uneasy now, mutters, his strength, it might be even greater than the rumors. Meanwhile, at the tower, a magical hum cuts through the air. The final piece of the resonant crystal clicks into place, and a massive circle ignites around it. Eileen, breathless and sweating, cries, the restoration is complete. She runs to the tower's edge, shouting, the barrier will reactivate soon. The demon's head snaps toward her voice, distracted. Julian smirks. Looking away mid-battle? Dumbest thing you can do. He promises, you won't live long enough to regret it. Energy explodes from his blade, a blue wave blasting outward like a storm. Julian zigzags forward, each step sinking into a slash. The aura slices through the demon, slowing its regeneration. Eileen and the Blue Lion Order stand frozen. Julian's blade cuts through the demon's skull in a final, precise strike, splitting it in two. Silence. Then the pieces fall, sliced meat and shattered bone hitting the dirt with a squelch. Julian's heavy breathing breaks the quiet as he resheathes his sword. He wipes sweat from his brow, muttering, I can't believe that actually worked. Everyone stares, a mix of awe and fear in their eyes. Julian notes it, thinking, of course they're scared. I'm a villain to them. And after that kind of power, it makes sense. A soldier stumbles forward, calling out. When Julian asks, what's wrong, the soldier grabs his hand, voice trembling. Thank you. A battlefield, fresh from carnage, smoke curling into the air. Soldiers, battered but breathing, crowd around Julian, their cheers raw with gratitude. One, voice breaking, says, we would have been wiped out if it wasn't for you. Another grabs his shoulder, pleading, you saved us all. The crowd roars louder. Julian stands there, stunned by the praise. Even Fern, hard as stone, steps up, muttering, thanks for the effort. Julian's polite smile makes Fern flinch, uneasy. Julian shrugs, casual, and says, can I leave the cleanup to you guys? I'm not exactly built for follow-up management. Fern nods, but his voice tightens. You really are different, he says. Even among nobles, you stand apart. How do you stay so calm after that? He mutters, you must not even be human, almost odd. Later, Julian slips into a quiet forest, finding a pond glowing under moonlight. He collapses onto a rock, sighing, that whole ordeal was far too dangerous. His hands shake as he admits, the fear, the adrenaline, it had me shaking more than I want to admit. Staring at the water, he says, that demon's face, cutting through it left a horrible sensation in my bones. He wonders, how did the real Julian ever get used to this? His voice drops. The longer I stay in this body, the more my thoughts shift. I'm starting to scare myself, becoming more like him with every fight. He pulls up his status window. A new ability glows. Trait of insight, he says. My knowledge, his combat memory. It reveals an enemy's weaknesses. This'll be useful. Keeps suspicion off me. But his face darkens. The moonlight sword's still incomplete. He draws the blade, its nicked surface catching the light. I had to pour an absurd amount of mana just to trigger the aura, he says, frustrated. It's nowhere near the real thing, neither the power nor the stability. Then, a spark in his eyes. A smile. Maybe, he says, I've got an idea. The scene cuts to a grand hall, banners swaying, tension thick. Robed men murmur. The Noble Elders Association is meeting. Hin steps forward, trembling. An elder snaps, are you saying Julian saw through the plan? Hin's lips quiver. Finally, he whispers, yes, that seems to be the case. The elder sneers, I knew your incompetence would drag us into danger. If you weren't blood related to the family head, I'd have you executed on the spot. Hin bows, voice shaking, I'm sorry, Lordern. Another figure speaks up. The shut eyes have been moving strangely, he says. They've submitted a proposal to the Imperial Secretary's office. It changes the entrance exams framework. Instructors won't be responsible if a participant dies. It'll fall under the Imperial family's name. Ern's eyes widen. A third man slams the table. This is Julian's doing, he growls. An underhanded warning, cloaked in procedure. He's the Imperial family's pet, and now he dares pull this. But another noble cuts in. This is frustrating, yes, he says to Ern, but it's also an opportunity. Ern narrows his eyes. What do you mean, Lord Aiden? Aiden smirks. Julian's been obedient, following the Imperial family's orders to the letter. But this shows he's acting on his own. That creates openings. It's like someone removing their shackles, only to injure themselves. Julian might have exposed a weakness. He suggests, before, we could send him to the northern front. Now, he might be more manipulable. We watch him, not provoke him. Someone scoffs, you mean let him act freely? Aiden laughs. Yes. Let the situation unfold. Back with Julian, in his quarters, plants thriving around him. The mission was short, he says, but it drained me. Too much mana, too fast. He smiles at the greenery. Decorating this place the way I like, it keeps me grounded. Seeing them so lively helps. But his mind shifts. The mission wasn't a total loss. The rumors about me took a hit, and I might have gained something better. He opens a chest, pulling out a shimmering crystal. This, he says, eyes gleaming, might be the key to completing the moonlight sword. He grins. The idea came after seeing the resonance stone in action. In the game, gemstones from the Empire could absorb mana. This could be it. Julian's hunched over his desk, surrounded by glinting gemstones that hum with raw power. He's deep in thought, piecing together a puzzle only he can see. These stones, they're not just shiny trinkets. Their mana conductivity, their capacity, it's unmatched. That's why the resonance stones work so well. He's got this theory burning in his mind. What if he could slip a layer between himself and the moonlight sword's blade? Something to channel the mana, to stabilize and sharpen its flow. He grips a gemstone, pouring his energy into it. The thing fractures, crumbling to dust in his hand. He stares at the glittering mess and mutters, clearly this one wasn't compatible. He needs a gemstone that syncs perfectly with his mana's signature. A knock at the door snaps him out of it. Must be dinner, he thinks, calling out, "Enter." But it's not the butler. It's Lazarus, again. Julian smirks. We seem to be running into each other a lot lately. Lazarus doesn't blink. The captain has asked you to report to the Imperial Secretary's office. Julian's brow arches. You're certain? Lazarus nods, stone-faced. With a sigh, Julian stands. I'll need to store the remaining gemstones for now. Completing the moonlight sword will have to wait. He's not shocked the secretary's office wants him. Rumors have been swirling, and he's no stranger to their weight. As he moves to leave, Lazarus hesitates, eyeing the shattered gemstones. What should be done with these? Toss them, Julian says, waving a hand. Lazarus frowns. They're rare and valuable. Julian's already halfway out the door. Toss them. The scene shifts. Julian steps into the Imperial Secretary's office, and it's like walking into another world. Compared to the stark, no-nonsense shy headquarters, this place screams wealth, polished wood, gilded accents, the works. He approaches the reception desk. I'm here to meet Sir Sedan Orby. The receptionist barely looks up. Sedan is currently occupied with another guest. Please wait in the designated room. Julian nods, thinking to himself, whoever's in there must outrank me. The waiting room's just as lavish, every detail screaming money. His eyes catch on something odd, a sword, lying across a plush couch like it was dropped there. It's rough, heavy, out of place in this pristine room. He steps closer, studying it. Clunky, yes, he murmurs, but unmistakably used by someone skilled. His fingers trace the inscription on the blade, a strong body harbors a strong mind. His eyes narrow. He knows this sword. Take your hands off it, lunatic, a woman's voice snaps, sharp as a whip. Julian doesn't need to turn. He knows that voice. It was a gift from my master, she says, venom dripping from every word. It's her Rin Rondell, or as he knows her from the game, Lynn Rondell. In that other timeline, he watched her die, cut down by his own hand. The memories burned into him, vivid and brutal. Yet here she stands, alive, her golden hair catching the light, her eyes shut tight, her sword raised and glowing faintly. She's no ordinary knight. Lynn, daughter of the noble Rondell family, is a force, sharp, lethal, fiercely loyal to her master, Heidenreich. She's the kind of fighter who could one day outshine even Julian. Everyone in the game loved her, especially in that iconic wedding dress, a fan favorite that dominated forums. But now? Those same eyes open, and they're cold as steel, locked on him like he's the enemy. A system warning flashes in his vision, negative emotion detected. Hatred. Lynn's face hardens. What do you intend to do with my father's sword? Julian raises his hands, a crooked smile tugging at his lips. I only wanted to take a look. His mind's already racing, scheming. Maybe he can push her, get her to talk, lower her guard. I'm surprised someone like you would leave such a valuable sword just lying around. She chuckles, low and sharp. My master isn't some reckless fool who feels the need to carry a weapon everywhere inside the Imperial Palace. Unlike you. Julian's thoughts click. Meticulous. Rigidly upright. Exactly what I expected. He shifts gears, testing the waters. The guest who came before me, was that the sword saint, Heidenreich? Her eyes flash like daggers. What's that to you? He covers his mouth, letting out a short laugh. I'm merely curious. After all, Reich was once my teacher, too. Her reaction's instant. Her hands tremble, her grip on her sword so tight her knuckles go white. Red flames flare around her, and her voice is raw, shaking with rage. What did you just say? How dare you speak that name? Another system warning, negative emotion detected. Rage. Sweat beads on Julian's temple, but he keeps his grin locked in place. Yeah, he thinks, she's beyond furious. He curses himself silently, knowing he's stepped into dangerous territory. Picture this, a dimly lit hall, tension crackling like static in the air. Julian standing there, heart pounding, knowing he might have pushed Lin too far this time. Her eyes are daggers, and he's bracing for whatever comes next when *creak*, the wooden door swings open, slow and deliberate. A voice cuts through the standoff, calm but firm, calling Miss Lin to the secretary's office. She doesn't even blink. Just turns on her heel, scowling, her steps sharp as she storms off. Pointing right at Julian, she spits out, "Goodbye," her voice cold enough to freeze blood. "I hope we never meet again." But then the voice calls again. This time, it's for Sir Julian. The air locks up. All three of them, Julian, Lin, and the moment itself, freeze. Julian exhales, slow, steadying himself. Stay cool, he thinks, plastering on his best charming grin as he saunters toward Lin. She looks like the ground just crumbled beneath her. Don't be so cold, he teases, winking. After all, we share the same master. Inside, his mind's racing. Hayden Reich. He might see him again soon. Too soon. Lin's face doesn't budge. Her jaw clenches, eyes sharp enough to slice through steel. That won't happen again, she hisses, voice low and venomous. Never speak of my master again. Julian just smirks faintly, saying nothing. His thoughts twist tight. He's about to meet his favorite character, Hayden Reich himself. Except now, Julian's the traitor in this story. Thrilled? Terrified? He can't tell. His hand tightens around a crumpled piece of paper in his pocket, marked with a sword insignia. They step into the Imperial Secretary's office. A man at a desk, papers stacked neat as a blade, looks up with a warm smile. Miss Lin, Sir Julian, welcome, he says, leaning forward, curiosity glinting in his eyes. I heard about your recent mission, Julian. Is it true you defeated the two-horned demon alone? Julian shrugs, chuckling softly. That was just a warm-up. Lin's not having it. Her irritation flares, cutting through the room. Where's my master, she demands, voice like a whip. Julian stays quiet, but he's wondering the same thing. Where's Hayden Reich? The man's tone shifts, formal now, like he's reading from a script. Lord Hayden Reich left shortly after assigning your last task, he says. Lin's eyes go wide. What do you mean, she snaps. He continues, unfazed. Reich also instructed someone to accompany you, Miss Lin. Sir Julian. Lin explodes. What, she shouts. Why do I have to be paired with a traitor? The word lands like a blow. Julian forces an awkward smile, sweat beading on his forehead. The man doesn't flinch. The mission could be dangerous, he explains. Since Sir Julian was present, Lord Reich asked for him to be assigned. Lin's face darkens, a storm brewing. Under her breath, she mutters, "What is my master thinking?" The man lets out a dry chuckle and lays it out plain. Investigate the slums. Julian props his chin in his hand, smirking. The slums, huh? Lin sneers beside him. I don't see why we have to care about some filthy slum district, she says, voice dripping with disdain. The man's eyes narrow slightly. According to reports, strange and terrifying creatures have begun to appear there. Demons. But the locals reject royal intervention. That's why you two are the right fit. Tied to the crown, but not part of it. As members of the Knight Academy and the Surface faction, you can act without stirring political unrest. The slums greet them under a gray, heavy sky. Rooftops sag like tired shoulders, cobblestones slick and dark underfoot. This place, it's a graveyard for the empire's forgotten, built by those it conquered and cast aside. A sanctuary for the unwanted. Julian's red eyes glint as he takes it in. They hate the royal family, he says, almost to himself. They chose the surface as neutral ground. Smart. His smile's pleasant, but his mind's a whirlwind. Lin's at his side, still bristling, unsure about this mission. He knows if she outshines him here, her path to Sword Saint is golden. Partnering with her? It's a chain around his neck. But as the royal family's hunting dog, he's got no choice. He rubs his chin, a slow grin creeping up. I'll take the mission, he says. Lin's arms shoot up. I refuse, she snaps, voice sharp enough to cut glass. Julian wants to scream too, but the clerk's next words stop her cold. Your master personally requested you accept this mission, he says. Julian leans in, voice sly. Going against your master's wishes? Lin falters, sweat beading on her brow. I understand, she mutters, teeth gritted, the weight of being Hayden's disciple crushing her. Julian watches her closely. She'll be hawk-eyed now, tracking his every move. He's not strong enough to push back. Not yet. His gaze flicks to the green gemstone at her neck. A moonstone. If he could just get a gem compatible with his mana. Then, like a crack of lightning, a surge of energy rips through the air. Julian's hand shoots out, pointing at the stone. What kind of gem is that? He demands, voice sharp. Lin scowls. It's a moonstone, she says, but before she can go on, the gem pulses, lifting into the air, glowing with an ethereal blue light. A shimmering aura wraps around them, suspending time itself. Silence. Ah. Then the glow fades, and the world snaps back. Lin spins on him, eyes blazing with suspicion. What did you just do? She demands. She's rattled, the moonstone's never done that before. Julian raises his hands, laughing nervously. The gem just caught my eye, that's all. Then, with a sly smile, he adds, for a moment, it felt like it tried to resonate with my mana. Maybe even absorb it. His eyes light up. That's it. The answer's been right there. He needs the gem. No hesitation. Julian's off, heading straight for the nearest gem shop. The clerk there spots him instantly. Sir Julian. It's been a long time, he says, all polite enthusiasm. Looking for anything special? Julian flashes a brilliant smile. I need a gemstone compatible with my mana. Specifically, a moonstone. The clerk's face tightens, discomfort creeping in. We don't carry moonstones, he says. As far as I know, no one does. They're incredibly rare, mined with difficulty, and usually sought by eccentric private collectors. No shop keeps them in stock. Julian's face darkens, his red eyes flaring. You're telling me there's no way to get one, he demands, voice low, dangerous. The clerk shrinks under his gaze, trembling slightly, realizing he's misstepped with a man of Julian's status. The air grows heavy, the question unanswered, hanging like a blade about to fall. Julian's cornering a shop clerk, who's sweating, stammering, moonstones can still be found, just not right now. Inside, Julian exhales, relieved, but his face stays sharp. He leans in, voice low, and says, go find one. His smile's forced, the pressure clear in his tone. He's thinking, I'll search the whole empire if I have to. Lin would spot a fake moonstone sword instantly, and he can't let that happen. It's mission day. Julian steps out, muttering, maybe I didn't frame that clerk hard enough. Still no moonstone. Bitterness stings. Lin's nearby, arms crossed, her voice icy with sarcasm. Was your important business actually at a jewelry store? Julian laughs awkwardly, saying, "One day you'll understand the beauty of gemstones." She doesn't respond, just turns and snaps, "Follow." He calls out, "You're going the wrong way." Irritated, she spins around, demanding, "What do you mean?" He grins, explaining, "The slums are a labyrinth, illegal buildings, hidden paths. Signs and maps won't help." Lin grips her map, declaring, "I'd rather rely on printed signs than trust you." Julian's smile softens. She's got a point, but the eastern slums are rookie killer. Even the game devs called it a nightmare. Lin's voice turns sharp, weary, accusing him, "Are you trying to trap me?" "As the disciple of the Sword Saint, I won't fall for a traitor's tricks." A golden light flares around her as she proclaims, "Unlike you, I'm different. I'll become the next Sword Saint." Her eyes burn, her stance proud. Julian scratches his cheek, thinking, she's got the wrong idea. She storms off, leaving him half confused, half amused. He mutters, "This mission's gonna be rough." The sky's clear, but danger looms. Julian's voice cuts in, worried, "You're really taking that path? Those danger signs aren't for decoration." Lin frowns at her map, asking, "Have you ever visited this slum in secret, First Officer Julian?" He hesitates, dodging, "What do you think?" She presses, "How do you plan to navigate if you don't know the way?" He smiles, pointing up, "Instinct." Lin stares like he's crazy. Sighing, she mumbles, "Let's just split up and get this over with." Julian follows, reminding her, the Empire's orders were clear. "We work together." That lights a fuse. Her eyes blaze as she snaps, "You think Hayden Reich is more important than Imperial orders? Never speak my master's name again." Her fists shake. Julian keeps his cool, smiling, but her fury burns. In her head, she's bitter. Julian's always been better, everyone says it. If it was him, this mission would be done. But her resolve hardens. She's the Sword Saint's top disciple. She'll prove it. She stops dead, staring at a sign, 011C. Julian steps up, asking, "What's wrong?" She brushes it off, "Nothing," but inside, she's panicking. The paths have shifted. They're looping. Then another sign, 01A. They're back at the start. Julian hides a chuckle, watching her unravel quietly. A stranger calls out, friendly, "Looks like you're going in circles." "First time here?" Lin asks, "You know this area?" He nods, saying, "I'll guide you, but you're buying me a drink." She sighs, agreeing. "I'm Ben," he says. When she replies, "Lin Rondell," his smile grows, thinking, jackpot. Julian starts to speak, but Ben cuts him off, "Don't care about your name, just follow." Julian rubs his chin, sure he's heard Ben before. In a dim tavern, Ben shouts, "Drinks for me and my two friends." Lin watches him drink, skeptical. The barkeep asks, "Where you from?" She answers, "The royal capital." He says, "That'll be 30 nars. Picture a grimy tavern in the heart of the slums, the kind of place where shadows cling to the walls and every glance feels like a challenge. The air's thick with the stench of cheap ale and cheaper intentions. Lin, wide-eyed and out of place, stands at the counter, her noble upbringing screaming in every stiff movement. Ben, a slick-talking local, smirks as he names his price, 30 nars each. Lin blinks, repeating, 30 nars each, like she's trying to process the number. Ben leans closer, his grin sharp. "You must not carry money," he teases, adding, "Prices in the slums are high." She shakes her head, unfazed, and pulls a glittering bag of gold from her pouch. 30 nars seems too cheap, she says, her voice steady but naive. Ben freezes. A noble, he thinks, his mind already spinning. He darts to the barkeep, whispering, "The special drinks. The strongest kind. The plan's simple, get the Imperials drunk, rob them blind." The barkeep nods, and a hand slips something into the drinks. 3 glasses hit the table, foam sloshing over the rims. The best in the slums, the barkeep declares, his smile too wide. Lin reaches for her glass, no hesitation, but before it touches her lips, Julian's hand shoots out, snatching it away. His eyes gleam like blades as he asks, what had been added to the wine? His smile's still there, but it's cold, dangerous. Ben plays dumb, yelling, what are you talking about? Julian doesn't blink. He thrusts the glass toward Ben. Drink it yourself, he demands. Ben hesitates, his bravado cracking. Julian leans in, voice like ice. Should I pour it down your throat instead? Lin's voice cuts through the tension. Julian, stop. The room goes dead silent. The barkeep whispers, panicked, is that really Julian, the imperial dog? Ben's sweating now, but he forces a grin, reminding himself he's not alone. The tavern's packed with his men, dangerous men. His hand slips into his coat, pulling a dagger. I'm not weak either, he thinks, his smile darkening. Then, a flash, green light floods the room. Julian's grin is razor sharp. I gave you a chance to come clean, he says, voice low and lethal. One of Ben's men lunges, sword gleaming. Julian's faster. He grabs the attacker by the throat, lifting him like he weighs nothing, just as another charges from behind. With a flick of his wrist, Julian hurls the first man across the room, crashing into the second with a bone-jarring thud. Both collapse, groaning, stunned. Julian stands tall, power radiating from him in thick, pulsing waves. His blood-red eyes glow, predatory, and the room feels smaller, heavier. Lin reacts instantly, her blade ringing as she draws it, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. What's happening? She mutters, panic creeping into her voice. The tavern's men, once cocky, now freeze, terror creeping into their faces as they watch Julian, overpowered by a single man. Julian's lips curl into a cold smile. He raises a jagged, blood-streaked shard of broken glass, pointing it at Ben's trembling throat. I don't care what kind of trick you attempted, he says, voice clear and unyielding. I won't let this slum become any messier. His gaze sweeps the room, pinning the other patrons. Ben's lackeys, he calls them out, his smirk deepening. Ben's paralyzed, sweat soaking his shirt, the glass trembling against his throat. Julian's voice cuts through again. Order your men to stand down, he barks. If they keep their weapons drawn, they'll share the same fate as the shattered glass. The silence chokes the room until Ben, voice cracking, shouts, retreat. His men grumble, backing off with gritted teeth, the tension easing just a fraction. Julian lowers the shard, setting it on the table with a soft clink. All this could have been avoided with honest answers, he says, exhaling slowly. If you'd cooperated, surrender would have been an option. Ben stumbles back, speechless, finally choking out, I surrender. Julian sinks into a chair, his tone cool, commanding. Death or surrender, he says. I recommend the latter. His smile is dangerous now. Decide. Ben's shoulders sag. I surrender, he mutters again. Lin steps forward, her blade pressing against Ben's back. Surrender would be preferable to dying, she says, her voice sharp. Ben, trembling, raises his hands. Julian, satisfied, asks, is that your final answer? Ben gives a quiet nod. Outside the tavern, Julian leads the way, his steps casual. I was suspicious the moment you offered to guide us, he says, a scrap of paper fluttering in his hand. I thought you were just a petty thug, but it looks like we've uncovered a slum-wide crime ring. He smiles, clearly pleased with the intel. Lin trails behind, head bowed, whispering, it's my fault. I didn't notice Ben's true nature earlier. Julian glances back, teasing but confident. Someone of your upbringing has likely never encountered people like that. Lin says nothing, her head dipping lower. Julian pauses, watching her. Is she losing confidence? After a moment, she asks, how did you know? How did you spot the trap? Her hands are clasped, tense but respectful. Julian smiles, recognizing her curiosity. Proud, but never too proud to learn. That's Lin Randall. He extends a hand, green light pulsing across his fingers. I sensed hostility within the glass itself, he explains. The sun's sinking, casting long shadows as Lin and Julian walk toward a truth neither of them is fully ready for. Lin's sharp eyes catch a flicker in Julian's expression, a reaction, she realizes, sparked by something deep within him. A mana detection trait, Lin says, her voice curious, almost like she's testing the words. A faint chime rings in her head, like a system notification whispering, mana detection trait unlocked. Julian tilts his head, green sparks trailing from his fingers like fireflies. Everything objects, people, places, carries traces of mana, he says. When two forces of mana meet, they react. He glances back at the tavern they just left. I used it before we even stepped inside. Ben's mana, it was aggressive. That was the first clue. Lin nods, piecing it together. She imagines it like sonar, clumsy echolocation, she calls it. Julian chuckles, a low sound that cuts through the tension. More or less, he says, stepping forward, his mana pulsing brighter, freer. He explains how most mages use this trick, but his raw power lets him sense what others miss. Lin's thoughtful now, her mind racing. She points out he never asked Ben about demons, just the slum's living conditions. Julian's smile is sharp, cryptic. True, he says, then flips the question. What do you know about demonization? Lin hesitates, then recites what she's been taught. Remnants of the Demon King Barbados can possess non-human life, spreading corruption, turning beasts into monsters. Julian's gaze darkens. He shakes his head. The slums are different. The capital's ringed by resonating stones, barriers no demon can cross. No forests nearby, no animals to corrupt. Just humans. The weight of his words hits Lin like a cold wave. Her face pales. If there are no other hosts, she says, her voice trembling, the only choice left is humans. Julian nods, his expression grim. That's what I believe is happening. Lin clutches her forehead, shaken. I can't believe I trusted him for even a moment, she mutters, cursing herself. But Julian holds up 3 fingers, his grin returning. 3 households are set to pick up fever medicine this week. High fever, a common sign of demonization. If I'm wrong, you can punish me however you like. Lin's not convinced, her doubt lingering as the sun dips lower, painting the sky crimson. Black birds circle overhead, ominous. They reach the final house. Julian notices Lin's expression soften. You look relieved, he says. She waves a hand, almost cheerful. If we haven't seen any demonization, that's gotta be a good thing, right? He agrees, but his eyes stay sharp, cautious. He knocks on the door. Silence. Then, an old man with bloodshot eyes peeks out, wary. Julian leans closer, sensing something off. The man's aura is wrong. He smiles, casual. How you doing? But in his mind, a memory clicks, that smell. Demon blood, faint but unmistakable, like the resonating stones he's encountered on past missions. Lin steps up, all business. We're from the royal court, she says. Julian adds, Julian Kreipart, of the One Eye. The old man's face twists. Leave, he shouts, slamming the door. Julian catches it with one hand, shoving it open. The man stumbles back, hitting the floor. Julian steps inside, his voice dripping with mockery. Thank you for your cooperation. Lin follows, confused. What's going on? She demands. Julian ignores her, tossing out a cryptic, your kindness is commendable. She blinks. What do you mean? His red eyes gleam. That kindness will destroy you one day. He approaches a sealed door, bound in iron chains. Lin protests, we're not here to attack anyone. The Empire only cares about results, Julian replies, holding up a datasheet. He gestures to a steaming bowl on the table. Records say this man lives with one son. So why are there 3 servings of food? He stirs the soup, its red hue glinting. Laced with sedatives. To drug guests and feed them to whatever's behind that door. Lin freezes, stunned. The old man bolts, fumbling with keys, shouting, "Son, escape!" He unlocks the door. A thick red mist pours out. A scream rips through the air. A demon emerges, eyes glowing, claws raised. Lin grits her teeth, charging. "I'll take you down," she yells. One swipe from the demon sends her crashing into debris. Julian watches, his mind racing. Is this her awakening? She'd asked about mana earlier, trying to understand. Now she's in real danger. He steps in front of her, shedding his cloak, his blue sword glowing. "Helping isn't optional," he says. "It's my mission. And I can't let the Sword Saint's prized disciple fall in battle." The demon lunges. Julian's system trait kicks in, insight activated. A flash fills his vision, revealing the demon's stats and weaknesses. His strikes are a blur, precise, blood-spraying. But the creature regenerates, wounds closing fast. Lin, battered, rejoins the fight. The demon keeps healing. "Create an opening." Julian shouts. Lin's eyes dart to the soup bowl. An idea sparks. She grabs it, smashing it into the demon's face. The creature staggers, dazed. Lin closes her eyes, her sword flaring with light. She channels everything into her next strike. But the demon grabs her, claws tightening. Blood drips from her mouth. Her sword falls. Regret floods her mind, she couldn't even clear a path for Julian. Lin's heart pounds as she faces a demon, its fangs glinting under the faint streetlight. She's frozen, thinking she's failed her master, unworthy to even face him. Then, a voice cuts through the chaos, sharp, commanding. "Lin!" It's Julian, his red eyes blazing like fire in the gloom. A green glow swirls around him, some kind of system energy crackling in the air. "You did well," he says, his voice steady, almost proud. The demon snarls, its eyes darting, but before it can react, electricity surges through its body. Julian's eyes flash green, and with one swift motion, he drives his sword straight through the demon's chest. The beast's grip on Lin falters, its claws slipping as it staggers. Lin, still caught, twists hard and slams a fierce kick into its face, shoving it deeper onto Julian's blade. The impact rings out, echoing off the alley walls. The demon lets out a final, ragged hiss and collapses, blood pooling beneath it. Julian stands there, sword in hand, victorious but worn. Lin's chest heaves as she stares at the fallen creature. "I can't believe you pierced it without the moonlight sword," she says, her voice a mix of awe and disbelief. "How's that even possible?" Julian grins, blood streaking the corner of his mouth. "That demon wasn't worth the moonlight sword," he says coolly, but inside, his heart races. Please buy it, he thinks, hoping his bravado holds up. The scene shifts to the palace, where they step off a carriage, the night air cool against their skin. "We're back," Julian announces, rolling his shoulder as they walk a tree-lined path. He's relieved, mostly because Lin hasn't caught on to his secrets. That's a win. But then she stops dead, forcing him to pause. Her jaws tight, her head bowed. "The reward should go to you," she says, her voice heavy. "I didn't contribute anything." Julian glances at her, reading the weight of her words. For someone like Lin, proud as hell, that admission stings. "Don't say that," he says, flashing a relaxed smile. "You were outmatched, sure, but you played your part." Lin frowns, clearly not buying his attempt at kindness. "I don't like you," she says flatly, looking away. Julian doesn't flinch. "You seem tense," he replies, calm as ever. She straightens, hands clasped, and faces him head-on. Her voice is steady, quoting her master, "Great power comes with great responsibility." She saw Julian's reckless, overwhelming strength in that fight, and it hit her hard. "I finally understand why Master expelled you," she says sharply. "It's your lack of restraint." Julian's smile turns thin, a hint of arrogance in his eyes as he touches his chin. "Restraint's a weapon for cowards," he says, spitting her words back with disdain. Lin's fists clench. "Are you calling my master a coward?" she shouts, her voice cracking with anger. Julian steps closer, his presence looming. "I'm not a noble," he says, voice low. "Not some sheltered aristocrat worshipping restraint." He gives her a final, piercing look. "You'll learn the hard way people like me exist in this world." Lin's left confused, muttering to herself, "What does that even mean?" Julian just waves over his shoulder, grinning. "Thanks for giving up your share of the reward," he says sarcastically, striding off into the palace lights. Lin sighs, frustrated. "He's impossible to figure out," she says, turning away. Under her breath, she adds, "Restraint isn't just for nobles." A carriage rolls up beside her, and a familiar voice calls out. "Heading home, Lin?" It's her Uncle Jen, offering a ride. "You look tired," he says. "Yes," she replies quietly, climbing in. As the carriage rattles toward the Rendile estate, Jen asks, "How'd the mission go?" "Must have been tough." "Mostly smooth," Lin says, thanking him. Jen's eyes narrow. "And your companion? That man with you?" "Julian of the one eye," Lin answers. Jen nods, his face darkening. "Thought so." That rebellious look of his, the elder council's crumbling because of him. Word is he's using the royal family to pressure them. Lin listens quietly. "I understand," she says. Jen crosses his arms, shaking his head. "Nobles shouldn't act like that. He's reckless, out of line." Then he drops a bombshell. "He's from a branch family." Lin's eyes widen. Julian's words click into place. So that's what he meant. Jen keeps going, warning her to steer clear. "He's dangerous, like a wild horse." Then he softens. "You've already proven yourself as Hayden's disciple. Maybe Julian's not as strong as people think." Lin pauses, then speaks slowly. "That's not true," she says, turning to him, her eyes steady. "No matter what else he is, Julian's strong. Even I have to admit that now." The estate glows golden under a starry sky. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit room, a figure leans forward. Commander Ordwin's voice cuts through the silence, sharp and grim. "What has Julian done this time?" she asks, her eyes like daggers. The sky had darkened, stars twinkling above the estate's golden glow. In a shadowy room, a figure leaned forward. Commander Ordwin's voice cut through the quiet. "What's Julian gotten into now?" she asked, her face stern, eyes like daggers. Julian let out a shaky chuckle, playing dumb. "What do you mean?" he said, but his mind was a whirlwind. He pictured the tavern brawl, the complaints, the broken chairs. His bravado wavered. Ordwin held up 2 documents and said a criminal named Ben, wanted by the one eye, had turned himself in. Her gaze locked on Julian. Ben had pointed the finger at him. Julian exhaled slowly. "Just Ben. No big deal." He relaxed a bit, shrugging. "Guess Ben figured out his guild was a bad bet," he said, feigning ignorance about why his name came up. Ordwin didn't push. She handed him a paper and told him to check the mission payout and report back. Julian's face brightened. "Finally, some cash flow," he muttered, recalling a note about the jeweler. He'd been thrilled, but as he scanned the paper, his stomach dropped. Not enough NARS for a batch of moonstones. He silently mocked himself. "Savings? What's that, Julian?" As he read the payout details, he froze. 11,000 nars. His heart skipped. That was nearly 15,000 in real money. He covered his mouth, calculating fast. Even splitting with Lin, it was solid. But before he could cheer, Ordwin spoke. This payout's low, she said. Injuries have kept me out of action. Julian gaped. Low? He spotted deductions, maintenance, registration, installments. His hands shook as he reached the final line. Net payout, 900 nars. His jaw tightened. That was it? Panic crept in. The Moonstones needed serious funding, and he was broke. He turned slowly, calling toward Win. She answered flatly. Any new missions? He asked. Surprised by his sudden drive, she raised an eyebrow. Short on coin? She asked. Sighing, she said no missions were available. I warned you not to overspend, she added. Julian looked away, grumbling. If I just handled things myself, I wouldn't be in this mess. Ordwin smirked. Sell your fancy trinkets to an art gallery. You could probably buy a castle. Julian's eyes sparked. Without a word, he bolted. Ordwin blinked, confused. Where's he off to? She called. Julian glanced back with a cheeky grin. To sell everything. Ordwin stared, muttering, he's finally lost it. Someone get him a map back to sanity. Elsewhere, two nobles in brown cloaks slipped through a grand doorway. Irene's voice echoed. Julian took down a demon without even touching the moonlight sword. He called Julian Wild, a loose cannon. Aiden, a council elder, gave a soft laugh. I get it, he said. A servant approached, offering to guide Aiden, but he waved them off. More to discuss with my subordinate, he said. In the shadows, another figure spoke. The elder council clearly doesn't trust Julian. He leaned back, grinning. Heard he smashed that demon without his best blade. The man across from him nodded. Yes, sir. Unsettled, the figure leaned forward. We'll recruit that beast and make him our strength. At the isekai'd Cosmos Art Gallery, Julian strolled through the displays, muttering, time to cash in. Hope this thing's worth more than my last haircut. A pale-faced appraiser, Doobie, greeted him warmly. Sir Julian. Julian grinned, shaking his hand. Thanks, pal. Perso, the appraiser, trailed him eagerly. Is that the piece? He asked, eyeing a covered object. Julian nodded. Perso whipped off the cloth, revealing a vivid painting. His eyes sparkled as he studied it with a monel. Unique brushwork, he said. Could be Accusius Vincent. Julian leaned in, curious, but Perso shook his head. Nope, it's a fake. Julian froze. A fake? He cursed inwardly, recalling it hung in the villa's entrance. He'd thought it was a masterpiece, not a knockoff. Perso, though, looked impressed. Never seen such a well-crafted fake, he said, grinning. I'll buy it. Julian blinked. Even though it's fake? Perso nodded. It's in great shape. 1,000 nars. Julian scratched his neck. Pity money, maybe, but cash was cash. It wouldn't cover the Moonstones, though. As Perso left to draft the contract, he invited Julian to browse. Julian nodded, then froze as a new voice spoke. Eileen entered, her presence lighting up the room. She spoke softly. Is 1,000 nars really okay? That painting's the real deal. Eileen's arrival hit Julian like a lightning bolt. He spun, eyes sharp, voice low and edged with suspicion. What are you doing here? What do you mean real deal? His arms crossed, locking eyes with her. His pulse raced, curiosity and caution battling inside him. He stood firm, waiting. Eileen tilted her head, glancing at Perso, who clutched the painting like it was his lifeline. Her voice turned icy, certain. My cousin has works in this gallery, but that's not the point. The room seemed to chill as her gaze pinned Perso, heavy and unyielding. His hands shook, the painting wobbling, sweat dripping down his face like he might collapse. Eileen stepped forward, her voice slicing the silence like a blade. No one in the Empire paints with oil like this. She snatched the canvas from Perso, her fingers tracing its surface. She stopped at a faint mark in the corner. That's Carusius's signature, she said. Julian leaned in, brow furrowed, eyes narrowed, studying the painting with fresh focus. Perso, trembling, face pale as a ghost, stammered, I missed the signature completely. Julian smirked. Missed it? Better get your Monel a new prescription. Julian fixed his piercing stare on Perso, his voice sharp as a winter breeze. He demanded if Perso had intended to trick him. The weight of the question hit Perso like a ton of bricks, sending him crumpling to the floor, his chest heaving with uneven breaths. Sprawled out, he gripped his head, his voice trembling as he pleaded for mercy. Julian took a step forward, but Eileen was quick, seizing his arm to halt him. She told him to ease up, her tone steady yet commanding, her face a mix of worry and resolve. She pointed out that mistakes in appraisals happen, nobody's flawless, not even Julian, who probably couldn't tell a Picasso from a pizza doodle. Julian paused, the spark in his eyes cooling to a grudging calm. A hint of regret flickered across his face. He realized that unsheathing his sword now, with so many watching, would paint him as the bad guy. With a quick chuckle, he shrugged off Aileen's grip, admitting that pressing further would only make him look like a sore loser. Turning to Perso, his voice was firm but even. He noted that if the painting was truly genuine, its value would shoot through the roof. Perso, still kneeling, eyes wide with fear, stuttered out a reply. He bowed low, his forehead grazing the floor, his voice thick with panic. He confessed the gallery couldn't afford it, not even if he sold everything he owned, including his prized collection of novelty mugs. Julian threw his head back, his laughter booming through the room, wild and gleeful. He slapped Perso's shoulder, his tone icing over again. He warned that incompetence could shatter a man's life faster than a bad joke at a comedy club. Then, eyeing the painting, frustration crept into his voice. He admitted he was still clueless about what to do with it. Perso, speechless, tears streaming down his face, shook like a leaf. Eileen spoke up, her voice soft but unwavering. She offered to help. Julian turned to her, suspicion glinting in his eyes. He asked if she truly meant to assist him. Eileen folded her arms, letting out a small sigh, exhaustion lining her brow. She confirmed it, mentioning she knew one buyer who'd snap up any Korskia's painting without a second thought, just one guy, probably too rich to care about art but not about bragging rights. Julian's eyes narrowed, studying her. He asked what the catch was. She laid out 2 conditions. First, Perso shouldn't face punishment. Julian grinned instantly, saying he hadn't planned to harm him anyway. Perso's already suffering enough, looking like he just saw his tax bill. Eileen hesitated, her voice softening as a blush crept up her cheeks. For the second condition, she needed his help with a task only he could tackle. Julian flashed a confident smile, saying he was ready and willing. His schedule was as open as a 24-hour diner. They shook hands, the air crackling with tension and possibility. Aileen's tone grew firm. She clarified she wasn't helping out of charity. She hated owing anyone, especially someone who might hold it over her head like a bad haircut. This was a deal, her help now for his in return, specifically with a problem in Jelen. Julian laughed, saying now he was the one in her debt. Curious, he asked what she needed, his voice tinged with intrigue. Aileen's tone dropped, her eyes distant, as if recalling something grim. She described a guard at Bayer Academy who'd been patrolling when the air turned colder than a penguin's picnic. He felt countless eyes on him, brimming with murderous intent, enough to chill anyone's soul. Julian's brows knit together, suspicion rising. He asked if it was ghosts. Eileen shook her head, her voice calm but heavy with unease. She explained that while the Academy's leaders had brushed off early warnings, things had worsened. Strange noises echoed from the old wing at night, and guards had been attacked, some even injured. Julian's interest sharpened, his eyes narrowing. He pressed her, what could it be if not ghosts? Aileen's voice turned crisp, confident, and grim. She believed it was a demon. The Academy's protections were strong, but she suspected a demon had slipped through a cracked barrier, like a cat sneaking through a pet door. A deep, mocking voice cut in, belonging to Hardy Godfrey, a professor at the Academy. He stepped forward, his smile dripping with arrogance. He greeted Julian with sarcasm thicker than a triple-decker sandwich. Eileen spun around, her eyes blazing. She snapped that he could at least acknowledge her. Would a simple hello kill him? Hardy shrugged, his tone cold and dismissive, saying they weren't close enough for pleasantries. He questioned why she'd drag someone like Julian into this mess. Eileen fired back, declaring Julian was a demon-slaying expert perfect for keeping the students safe, unlike Hardy, who probably couldn't slay a bad mood. Hardy sneered, his voice oozing disdain. He told her if she wanted to step out of her family's shadow, she should try harder on her own, maybe start by not leaning on others like a crutch. Eileen's face flushed with fury, her eyes sparking. She shot back that he should focus on rewriting his latest paper, which was so bad it nearly flunked, maybe stick to grading papers instead of throwing shade. Hardy's face twisted with rage, her words hitting like a well-aimed dart. He growled that a branch family nobody had no right to talk to him like that. Eileen's voice roared like a storm, demanding he repeat himself. Julian, his hand already on his sword hilt, stepped forward. His gaze was cold, a tempest barely contained. Eileen's heart raced, confusion surging through her. Was Julian angry at Hardy's jab at her family or at her own fiery outburst? She stammered, begging him to hold off, but Julian's sword was already drawn, its steel gleaming under the gallery lights, slicing the air with a frosty edge. Her heart pounded as she squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for chaos. Hardy's panic exploded. He threw up his trembling hands, his face pale as a sheet. Then, out of nowhere, a small stone smacked the side of his head with a dull thud. Behind him, the wall crumbled, stones tumbling to reveal grotesque impish faces, their blood-red eyes glowing with malice. Hardy's scream shattered the air, raw with terror. He yelled that the demons were hiding in the walls, talk about a bad interior decorator. Julian moved like a whirlwind, his sword carving through the imps in a deadly rhythm, each strike precise and ruthless, a dance with no missteps. When the last imp fell, he turned, his gaze sharp as frost on a windowpane. Hardy, now on his knees, wailed for help, his voice breaking. He screamed that a demon was on his back. Julian leaned in, spotting a tiny imp latched onto Hardy's shoulders, its red eyes dripping with spite. The moment Julian's gaze locked onto it, the demon flinched, as if burned by his mere presence. Julian gave a chilling smirk and said it didn't matter if someone was from the main or branch family, he didn't spare demons, no matter who they clung to, unlike some people who cling to bad attitudes. He told Hardy that if he wanted to live, he'd better beg a branch family member for help. Gripping his sword with purpose, Julian drove it into the ground. A sharp metallic clang rang out, followed by a burst of force that obliterated the imp on Hardy's back. Julian quipped that Hardy was overreacting, probably not the first time he'd made a mountain out of a molehill. Eileen flinched, as if hit by a wave of dark energy. Pointing ahead, her eyes wide with fear and resolve, she shouted that it was there. The remaining imps began to cluster, their forms swelling grotesquely. From their mass, dark magical tendrils burst forth like writhing shadows, cloaking the room in an ominous, suffocating power. Eileen and Hardy quaked under the mounting tension, their pulses racing like wild horses. The imps fused into a colossal rat, a beast unlike any they'd faced before. Its ruby-red eyes blazed like twin torches, and its razor-sharp teeth shimmered like newly forged daggers. With a thunderous jolt, it swiped a claw through the air, shaking the ground beneath them. Julian, unfazed, stood steady as a statue. His face was calm, smooth as a still pond. He raised his sword, its blade glinting faintly in the dim glow, and spoke in a low, menacing tone. "Is this your true form, demon?" Pathetic, cobbling together scraps to survive, he taunted, his voice dripping with scorn. The giant rat faltered, its massive body trembling, eyes wavering with doubt. But then it let out a deafening roar, its whip-like tongue lashing out. It lunged at Julian with savage force. Julian charged forward without hesitation, his sword slicing through the air like lightning. Their clash was a brutal dance, strike after strike, each move sharp and fierce. Finally, Julian landed a devastating blow. The rat screeched, a wail of torment echoing through the space. It began to shrink, retreating into itself. Seizing the moment, Julian surged forward, gripping his sword tightly, and delivered a final, dazzling slash that ripped the creature apart. The monstrous rat dissolved into wisps of black mist. Behind a shimmering magical barrier, Eileen and Hardy watched, breathless. As the demon vanished, countless imps scattered, melting away like bad dreams. Eileen lowered the barrier, her hands trembling from the effort. She turned to Julian, her eyes sparkling with awe and respect. "How'd you know a demon was hiding here?" she asked, a grin tugging at her lips. Julian flashed a sly smile, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "That's my little secret," he said, chuckling softly. "Guess I'm the Sherlock of demon hunting, minus the deerstalker hat," he thought, recalling the odd hue he'd sensed while using his color of negation on Hardy. He kept that to himself, musing that no one here would get his game system anyway. Eileen spun away, her voice brimming with confidence and a playful edge. "We'll dig into that secret later," she teased. "But seriously, how does someone who claims to despise the main family end up saving our skins?" Julian arched an eyebrow, surprised. "Despise them?" he echoed, feigning shock. Aileen's tone sharpened, though her smirk stayed. "Don't play dumb. You called me an action-obsessed half-breed once," she said, her words light but pointed. Her mind drifted briefly, recalling how those words had stung, back when she was a girl chasing power. Yet here was that same man, protecting the Branch family. It felt surreal. He's still that smug academy kid, all righteous but half-hearted, she thought, her hands weaving glowing magical stones that pulsed like tiny stars. Her voice turned mockingly sarcastic. "Everyone else might cower before you, but not me. That superiority complex of yours, always looking down on the Branch family and me." Julian paused, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. He rubbed his chin, offering a faint smile. "I was wrong to say that back then," he admitted quietly. The words hit Eileen harder than she expected, her breath catching. Did he just apologize? Julian? Her thoughts scrambled. Biting her lip, she looked up, her voice soft but earnest. "Thanks," she said. Julian stepped closer, curiosity in his eyes. "For what?" he asked. Blushing, she mumbled, "For what you just did. Facing that demon." He shrugged, grinning. "No biggie. Just another day at the office. Minus the coffee breaks," he added silently. The wall behind them, once cracked from the chaos, now stood fully restored. Eileen wiped sweat from her forehead, exhaling deeply. "It's finally over," she said, relieved. Julian, a step behind, shot her a warm smile. "Nice work, Eileen," he said. Her eyes lit up, excitement bubbling. "Now that you've slayed the demon, time to meet the painting's buyer," she chirped, practically bouncing. Julian was introduced to an older man gazing at the painting with reverence. The man sighed, his voice heavy with emotion. "Seeing this before I pass brings me peace," he said. Sipping tea, Julian tilted his head. "What do you make of it?" he asked. The man, Alam Corney, vice dean of Bale Academy, nodded slowly, his eyes misty. "It's Korskius's last work, Red Vineyard," he said. A wheat field battered by a wildstorm under a dark, endless sky. Julian raised an eyebrow, impressed. Maybe this guy's an art guru, he thought. To me, every painting's just fancy wallpaper. Still, he listened as Alam spoke softly, almost reverently, of roads stretching beyond the field, leading nowhere certain. I don't know where they go, Alam admitted. Julian nodded thoughtfully. It feels lonely, like the artist poured all his grief into it, he said, recalling the letter that came with the painting. I poured all my sadness and soul into this. His mind churned. Is everything in it connected? He wondered aloud. Alam nodded. Exactly. A strange glow surrounded the man, making Julian's heart race. Suspicion prickled. What's this vibe? His system pinged softly, color of suspicion, doubt. Was the painting fake? But Eileen and Alam's reactions screamed authenticity. So what was off? Before he could puzzle it out, Alam's voice cut through, firm and low. Julian, he said, snapping Julian's thoughts like a twig. Julian's heart jumped, but he responded quickly, voice tight. Alam's sharp gaze seemed to slice through him. Do you really understand this painting? Alam asked. Frankly, it feels like you're just here for the cash. The words landed like a punch, heavy and sharp. Julian hesitated, a weight settling in his chest. Ouch, called out by an art nerd, he thought, eyes narrowing. It clicked, even if the deal went through, he might not get the full price. Clearing his throat, Julian regained his confidence. This is believed to be Korskius's final work, he said smoothly. He died soon after finishing it, which only boosts its value. Alam sighed, memories flickering in his eyes, then smiled faintly. You're right. Korskius died at that very field, he said, nodding. I underestimated you. Julian scratched his head, a shy blush creeping up. You're too kind, he said, chuckling. Guess I'm not just a sword-swinging meathead after all. Alam's tone grew eager. Shall we discuss the price? Julian nodded, a confident grin spreading inside. Thank the stars, we're back on track. Alam held up 4 fingers, his face unreadable. What do you think of that? He asked. Julian's pulse raced. 400,000 nars? He stroked his chin, debating whether to push for more. This painting marks the dawn of a golden era after Korskius's death, he said boldly. Its value is undeniable. Alam's hand paused midair, hesitation in his eyes. After a beat, he spoke. I'll add another 100,000 nars. Julian's body buzzed with excitement, his heart hammering. 500,000 nars? It was beyond his wildest hopes. Time to buy myself a fancy hat, or maybe 2, he thought, grinning inwardly. Julian stood before the garish painting, mentally converting its value. If nars were dollars, it'd be over $500 million. He stifled a laugh, shaking his head at the thought. Who'd pay that much for something this hideous? It looked like a toddler's finger painting gone rogue. Lost in his amusement, he barely noticed Alam Corney calling his name. The sudden voice yanked him back to reality. Flashing a charming grin, Julian quipped that Alam must now see the painting's true worth, probably enough to buy a small kingdom. Alam Corney nodded with a chuckle, agreeing they should seal the deal. Julian's excitement simmered beneath his cool exterior. He remembered Perso's claim that the gallery couldn't afford this masterpiece, even if they sold everything. Now, Julian got it, only someone of Alam's caliber could drop that kind of coin. The scene shifts to Bayer Academy. Eileen slipped through the doorway, her steps soft but deliberate. With a respectful nod, she greeted Alam Corney, noting she'd come at his summons. Alam, who'd been quietly marveling at the painting like it was the Mona Lisa's flashier cousin, turned with a warm smile and gestured for her to sit. With a flick of his wrist, he magically poured tea, his tone gentle as a summer breeze. Casually, he asked about the old building, wondering if the issue was sorted. Eileen, cradling the teacup, gave a confident nod, her lips curling into a smile. She assured him everything was under control, no sweat. Alam's eyes softened with relief as he exhaled, admitting he'd been worried. After a brief pause, he asked if she'd faced any hurdles. Eileen took a sip, her pride shining through. Nothing too tough, she said, as if she'd just aced a pop quiz. Alam gazed at his teacup, a guilty sigh escaping him. He apologized for handing her such a thorny task, his voice tinged with regret. Then his face grew serious, his eyes sharpening like a hawk's. In a low tone, he warned that what he was about to share was strictly between them. He suspected that Dawn Society was behind the incident. Eileen's expression darkened, her brow furrowing. Why would the Dawn Society target the Academy? She asked, her voice tight. Alam shook his head slowly, admitting he wasn't sure of their motives, but circumstantial evidence pointed to them exploiting a flaw in the barrier. To avoid panic, he added, the matter was hushed up. Eileen's grip on her teacup tightened, her heart pounding like a drum. Her mind raced, a cult of demon worshippers slinking through the Empire, targeting their academy? Yikes, talk about a plot twist. Noticing her silence, Alam softened, reassuring her not to fret too much. Security was beefed up, he said, and the academy would be protected at all costs. Eileen let out a slow breath, her shoulders easing slightly. She nodded, her voice quiet but firm. With a warm smile, Alam added that they owed their resolution to Sir Julian. Eileen's cheeks flushed pink, and she stammered Julian's name, quickly regaining her poise. Had Alam met him? She asked. Alam's eyes twinkled as he chuckled, confirming he had, and thanks to Julian, he'd snagged a priceless piece of art. Probably worth more than his tea collection, he joked. Eileen's smile radiated warmth. She mentioned she'd wanted to thank Julian for slaying the demon, but he'd pulled a Houdini and vanished. Alam sipped his tea, noting Julian had taken his payment and bolted, apparently to buy a ton of moonstones. Eileen gasped, nearly choking on her tea, her face turning beet red. Wiping her mouth, she stammered in disbelief and shot to her feet, blurting that she had urgent business before sprinting out. Alam watched her go, puzzled, sipping his tea. Why's everyone in such a rush these days, he muttered, wondering if he'd missed a memo. Eileen tore through the streets, heart racing like she was chasing the last cupcake at a bake sale. She burst into the gem shop, where the shopkeeper looked like he'd just seen a ghost. He apologized nervously, explaining they were sold out. Eileen cut him off, insisting there had to be some moonstones left. The shopkeeper shook his head, saying Sir Julian had bought more than expected, like he was planning to build a moonstone castle. Eileen slammed her hand on the counter, her eyes blazing with fury, and demanded to know when they'd restock. The shopkeeper, trembling like a leaf, admitted it'd take much longer this time. Despair washed over Eileen, her face darkening. Her voice quavered as she stammered that she needed those moonstones for her thesis. Her world seemed to collapse, tears brimming in her eyes. With a sharp, broken cry, she shouted Julian's name, loud enough to startle the shop's pet parrot. The scene cuts to Julian, standing across from a man, a triumphant glint in his eyes as he clutched a sparkling moonstone. The blacksmith, Ruger Orland, asked if Julian wanted a sword forged with the gem. Julian nodded eagerly, his enthusiasm practically glowing. Could it be done? He asked, like a kid eyeing a shiny new toy. Ruger's face grew stern, and he revealed a stash of moonstones, asking if Julian meant a sword like Silver Moon. At that, Ruger let out a roar of protest that could have rattled the forge's walls. Silver Moon wasn't a sword, he bellowed, it was a glorified paperweight. He swore he wouldn't sully his pride by crafting such a thing, his face flushed with righteous fury, as if Julian had asked him to forge a spoon. Julian stayed calm, his gaze steady. In a soft but firm tone, he explained he wanted a weapon for battle, not a wall hanger. Ruger slammed his fist on the table, cracking it like a bad joke, and shouted that Silver Moon was a luxury item, not a real blade. Pointing at Julian's blueprint, he scoffed that it wasn't worthy of being called a sword, more like a fancy butter knife. The argument heated up, the forge's air growing thick with tension. Ruger's voice boomed with pride as he declared that Blazing Forge only crafted weapons fit for knights, true masterpieces, like the sword of Heidenreich, his personal hero. Julian didn't flinch. His eyes blazed with determination as he stated he wanted moonstones engraved in the blade, addressing Ruger by name. Ruger scoffed, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Embedding a moonstone in the sword's core was reckless and foolish, he said. No warrior could fight with a blade weaker than basic steel. Julian rubbed his chin, pondering the issue like a detective solving a case. Ruger's assistant, a young woman with a gentle but resolute voice, stepped forward. She told Julian they only forged weapons worthy of the Blazing Forge emblem. A brittle blade would shatter their reputation faster than a dropped glass. Julian's pulse quickened under their refusal. He wanted this sword forged here, at the birthplace of Heidenreich's legendary blade. After a long pause, Julian raised a hand, his resolve unshaken. He promised the sword wouldn't break, cross his heart, and hoped to trip over a hammer. Ruger pointed at him, skeptical, asking if he truly believed that. Julian flashed a defiant grin, declaring he was Julian, and if they doubted him, they could test his skill. He slammed a heavy coin pouch on the table, ka-ching, and said they could forge the weapon first. He'd pay top dollar. Ruger and his assistant exchanged glances, curiosity warring with doubt. Julian leaned in, his voice low and persuasive. If the sword broke during testing, he vowed, he wouldn't demand his money or moonstone back. Ruger frowned, stroking his beard, weighing Julian's bold challenge like it was the heaviest anvil in the shop. After a brief pause, he gave a slow nod, agreeing with a grin, saying that if the sword snapped, they'd pretend it never existed, like a bad haircut forgotten by morning. Days drifted by. The sword was forged. Ruger handed it over, his expression a mix of pride and unease, like a chef presenting a dish he wasn't sure would impress. He explained their top smiths had toiled endlessly, failing repeatedly before crafting this masterpiece. Locking eyes with Julian, he asked if he truly meant to swing it in combat. Julian grasped the weapon, its blade glinting and flashing light into his gaze. He triggered his flawless swordsmanship. A surge of mana burst from the sword, wild as a thunderstorm. With a steady nod, he said, "You bet." His voice brimmed with certainty as he asked if they should kick off the test. The scene swept to lively streets, where a crowd buzzed, their chatter rising and falling like a restless tide. Julian scanned the faces, a bit startled by the turnout. He quipped that they'd drawn quite the fan club, almost enough for a festival. The assistant, her cheeks lightly flushed, replied softly, admitting everyone was itching to see the show. She offered to shoo the crowd away if it bothered him. Julian let out a hearty chuckle, confidence radiating, and waved off the suggestion, saying he didn't mind the spotlight. Ruger then stepped forward, dragging out a set of iron armor with a clang. He thumped it solidly, his voice bold with challenge, declaring the armor was custom-made for this trial. He stressed it wasn't some flimsy gear. Meeting Julian's gaze, he noted the armor was a full centimeter thick, nearly pure steel. If they were testing the sword, he said, they'd go big or go home. He dared Julian to slice through it. Julian gripped the sword, his grin widening like a kid about to unwrap a gift. He remarked that Ruger sure knew how to set the stage. Channeling his power, his body and blade swirled with a tempest of mana, energy spiraling like a whirlwind. With a thrilled shout, he declared a boring target would have been a snooze. The crowd gasped, their murmurs swelling into a roar of cheers. Ruger gave a slight nod, muttering under his breath with a skeptical squint, wondering if this was really the legendary sword. Even with the moonlight blade active, he thought, no way it holds up. Julian lifted the blade, its glow soft and cool as moonrays. His pulse quickened with excitement. He sensed something new, as if the sword had found its own beat, its own destiny. With a mighty swing, he struck the armor. A sharp crack tore through the air. The steel shattered instantly, fragments scattering like metal confetti. The crowd erupted in awe, shouts of wonder echoing everywhere. Ruger's face paled as he blurted out that it was unthinkable, like seeing a pancake cut through a tank. The assistant covered her mouth, her voice shaky as she asked how this could happen, her eyes wide with disbelief. Julian grinned, pride sparkling in his gaze. He poured swirling mana into the blade, its energy spinning like a galaxy. He proclaimed this was the true moonlight blade. Gripping the hilt tighter, he felt its power pulse through his arm, like a high five from the sword itself. The assistant bowed slightly, her voice trembling as she admitted that even without Julian's full effort, their prized armor was now scrap metal. Julian turned to Ruger with a bold smile, asking what the next challenge was. Ruger stayed quiet, jaw tight, his eyes conflicted, as if the forge's pride had been humbled by the very blade they'd doubted. Mana still danced in the air, casting ghostly reflections on the forge's walls like scattered starlight. Then, before Julian's eyes, a translucent panel flickered into view. The system announced a message: the imperfect moonlight blade trait had transformed into the moonlight blade. Julian's smile grew, his heart pounding with thrill, his eyes alight with triumph. A new trait had awakened. He admired the sword in his hand, its craftsmanship flawless, not a single nick on its surface. Pride swelled within him as he thought of the effort poured into it, like perfecting a recipe after 100 tries. At last, he'd done it. Ruger Orlin stepped forward, still rattled, awe etched on his face. With a hand over his mouth, he spoke softly, admitting he'd clearly misjudged Julian, like betting against a horse that wins by a mile. Julian sheathed the sword smoothly and faced Ruger, a confident grin on his lips. He said sometimes actions shouted louder than words. Ruger nodded slowly, his expression serious, his voice low with a stern warning. He cautioned that if the sword ever broke, the blazing forge's reputation would crack too, like a glass dropped at a fancy dinner. He urged Julian to wield it with that in mind. Julian turned back, smiling steadily, promising to carry the blade with honor. At that moment, a man approached the pile of shattered armor, his eyes narrowing in amazement, like someone spotting a unicorn in their backyard. He picked up a jagged steel shard, muttering that this was Blazing Forge's custom armor, yet it had been sliced clean through. He glanced at Rena, his voice tinged with curiosity, confirming Julian had been there. Rena frowned, visibly surprised, and asked if he was sure. The man lifted another shard, turning it in his hands, and said thoughtfully that he sensed no trace of Julian's spiritual energy. He added that Julian was remarkable, a swordsman who threw his all into every swing, like a chef tossing every spice into the pot. He remarked it must have been a spectacle to see him take on the armor. Rena sighed softly, her eyes far off, wondering to herself if it could be true. She shook her head, pushing away the growing unease. The man turned to her again, his voice low, laced with intrigue. He asked if she was worried about Julian. Rena flinched, her cheeks reddening as she stumbled over her words. He grinned at her reaction, his eyes twinkling playfully, noting they'd just finished a mission together. He asked how Julian had seemed. Rena lowered her gaze, her voice soft but warm with admiration, saying he was truly powerful. The man nodded, his expression sharpening like a blade. He asked if she'd noticed anything odd about Julian. Rena's breath hitched, her heart racing as she turned to him, her voice wavering. She asked what he meant by odd. His tone grew colder, his eyes darkening as he clarified, asking if Julian seemed like someone tied to the Dawn Society. The words hit Rena like a bolt. Her eyes widened, her voice faltering in shock as she repeated the question to herself, hardly believing it. Julian, linked to the Dawn Society? The scene shifted to Julian, strolling down a sunlit street, twin swords gleaming at his hips like they were showing off. He wore a proud smile, his eyes shining with confidence. He murmured that he was becoming more like Julian every day, like he was borrowing the guy's swagger. But his smile faded, replaced by a heavy sigh. His gaze grew serious as he reminded himself not to lose focus on his true mission. He had to return to his real world, he couldn't stay Julian forever. Rubbing his chin, the weight of reality pressed down like a bad Wi-Fi signal. To go back, he realized the game world had to end. That meant reaching the story's final chapter. Heidenreich had to stop the Demon King, Barbados, from rising again. Julian shook his head, his gaze flaring with renewed determination. This wasn't his life, he reminded himself, his voice a low, steady murmur in his mind. Where were they in this tangled story? The Dawn Society was starting to stir, a shadowy cult bent on reviving Barbados, the sworn nemesis of Heidenreich and Rena. His expression darkened as he recalled that Rena's father, Ron Bell, had fallen to their schemes. Deep down, he admitted he wanted to stand with Heidenreich, but it wouldn't be a walk in the park, more like a stroll through a dragon's den. He stroked his chin, speaking in Julian's smooth tone. Should he slip into the Dawn Society to dig up their secrets? But how? Sneaking into a cult sounded like signing up for a bad haircut, risky and hard to fix. A sudden spark jolted his thoughts. The system pinged, sharp and clear, intrusion intuition trait activated. His senses snapped to life, picking up a strange mana swirling around him, like invisible eyes boring into his back. He scanned the surroundings, muscles taut, his voice dropping to a tense whisper as he demanded, "Who's there?" No one answered. He wondered if his mind was playing tricks, but the system's alert squashed the doubt faster than a goblin stomping a cupcake. "Come out," he called, his tone brimming with confidence. "I've already sensed your mana. No use hiding." From the shadows, a figure emerged, and Julian let out a nervous chuckle, like he'd just tripped over his own ego. "Have we met?" he asked the hooded woman, squinting. Two figures stepped from the gloom, a towering shadow looming like a grumpy storm cloud, and Eleanor, who tilted her chin with a faint, knowing smile. Julian's memory clicked. Eleanor Demel, the Dawn Society's bishop, a master of black magic so slick she could probably charm a skeleton into dancing. Well, he said, his voice steady but his heart doing a little jig. Eleanor Demel, Heidenreich's sworn enemy. Been a while, hasn't it? You and your robed buddy over there. Eleanor's soft laugh cut through the tension. You saw through my disguise, she said, pulling her violet cloak tighter around her. I'd expect nothing less from you, Julian. That sharp eye of yours is sharper than a goblin's nose for gold. Julian squared his shoulders, projecting calm. I've got a hunch why you're here, he said, though his mind was scrambling like a bard at a silent auction. She tilted her head, her smile teasing. If you're so sure, that makes this easier. She raised two fingers. Time to give me your answer. His lips pressed tight, sweat prickling his brow. Answer? His inner voice groaned. He'd been bluffing, tossing out confidence like a bard tossing glitter. I'd like a bit more time to mull it over, he said, forcing a smile that felt as convincing as a troll's love poem. Eleanor's tone flattened. That won't do. You're the one who reached out to join the Dawn Society first. Shock hit him like a rogue sneak attack. Join the Dawn Society? Things had spiraled that far? Inwardly, he cursed. Cleaning up Julian's messes was starting to feel like mopping a dungeon floor during a flood. He steadied his breath, mind racing. The original story's flow dictated that Julian would fall to Hayden and, craving power, join the Dawn Society after dabbling with demons. But he clenched his jaw, muttering to himself, it doesn't have to happen now. There's no deadline, right? Eleanor's eyes narrowed, sharp as a thief's dagger. Maybe so, but you know how it looks. They might think you're plotting to bring us down, that this is all a setup. A loyal dog of the imperial family, perhaps? Julian grimaced. Suspicious much? Joining the Dawn Society was a tightrope over a pit of vipers. If the imperial court sniffed out his ties, he'd be toast, burnt, crispy toast. Worse, if Hayden caught wind, it'd force a deadly showdown, locking Julian into a path where one of them wouldn't walk away. He'd be trapped in this game forever, no save point in sight. Smoothing his coat, he forced calm into his face. I didn't know you were so paranoid, Eleanor, he said, keeping his voice light. She raised a hand from her cloak sleeve, her tone cool. You know too much, Julian. Back out now, and I won't let you off easy. He tilted his head, a playful glint in his eye. And if I don't? Her smile sliced sideways, sharp as a rogue's blade. I won't let you off easy, she repeated, then glanced over her shoulder with a hint of amusement. A Manchier's ready. A hulking figure stepped forward, gravel crunching under heavy boots, the street trembling like it was nervous. The man moved like a battering ram, shoulders broad, fists like warhammers. Eleanor's voice was cool as she explained, the Dawn Society's combat unit makes knights look like squires playing dress-up. Decide quickly, or else. The hooded man ripped back his cowl, revealing white hair and blazing eyes. I'm Pellier, the Iron Fist, he bellowed, voice shaking the air. I'll crush you. Julian's stomach sank. Pellier pounded forward, the street quivering, stone flexing under his strides. Remember this scar? Pellier snarled, baring his teeth with feral glee. I still feel the sting from the wound you gave me. Julian's inner voice groaned. Another one of Julian's victims? This was getting old, like a bard singing the same tune at every tavern. We must have crossed paths, Julian said aloud, flashing a polite smile. Sorry, I don't really recall small fries. No offense. Pellier's face split into manic laughter, howling like a wolf who'd heard a bad joke. Small fry, huh? Julian's mind screamed at him to stop pretending he was Julian. It was like borrowing a dragon's hoard and expecting no consequences. In a blink, he vanished from the spot. A streak of motion cut the air, followed by a startled whisper, he's gone. Pellier squared up, growling, let's see how long that attitude lasts. A crystalline window flashed, the system's cold voice announcing, trade activating, exceptional swordsman. Julian's hand found his sword's hilt, steel hissing free. He met Pellier's incoming fist, eyes widening as he realized, oh no, he'd grabbed his old steel sword instead of the fancy new moonlight stone one. Habits are scarier than a mimic in a treasure chest, he thought, his coat bunching as Pellier's massive hand grabbed him. He needed to hold this brute off as long as possible. TCH, Julian clicked his tongue, driving his blade in a tight, blue arc. Thunderous clashes echoed down the alley, blades and fists shattering the air, sparks flying like a wizard's misfired spell. Sliding back, Julian's mind raced. This is bad. I need a breather. The air turned violet, sigils coiling like mystical snakes. A pillar of sorcery erupted, knocking Pellier off balance and blasting the street into a geyser of shattered stone. Debris flew, clipping Julian's ribs and spinning him into a wall. He coughed, dust stinging his lungs, muttering, ouch, that's gonna leave a bruise. Pellier's laughter cut through the smoke. How's it feel to lose to a small fry, he taunted, grinning like a goblin with a shiny new coin. Julian exhaled, shoulders heaving. Ha, he muttered, staring at the badge glinting on his chest. His thoughts burned with bitter exhaustion. Why was he stuck cleaning up messes he didn't make? It was like inheriting a dungeon full of traps but no map. Standing amid red flames, he growled, I'm done scrubbing up Julian's disasters. Pellier smirked. Still moving, huh? Eleanor raised a hand. Hold on, Pellier. Something's off. A blue system panel flashed, emotional intensity at peak. Julian rose, a purple aura flaring around him. This is so annoying, he snarled. Another panel blinked, unique trait activating, open eyes. Crimson heat surged, his sword drinking the light, humming like a bard warming up for a ballad. The system praised the flame's manifestation. Pellier's eyes widened. What is that sword? He demanded, teeth bared. I'll smash it. Julian moved first, steel singing. A black bloom of blood burst on Pellier's shoulder. The square rang with the clash. Pellier stared, then screamed, his arm mangled. panic hit like a rogue's critical strike. Back off, he rasped, thrusting out a hand. Stop. Red slashes tore through the air. Julian wove between them, his fox-like smile calm and mocking. Pelayer stumbled back, retreating. From above, Julian's cape flared, his grin turning wild. Pressure rolled off him in waves, and Pelayer trembled, thinking, this power, he's a monster. Julian's soft laugh echoed, delight dancing in his eyes. Terror gleamed in Pelayer's gaze as Julian tilted his head, heat pulsing behind his brow. Julian mutters to himself, curious about this strange rush coursing through him, and admits he's kind of enjoying it. A system ping flashes, open eyes, a Foxy user exclusive, activates at emotional peaks, cranking up impulse, dimming reason, and spiking aggression. Down below, Pelayer writes, his body creaking as he pleads with Julian to stop. The system adds a final note, user aggression levels critical. The fox-eyed man, blade raised, eyes gleaming with a kid-like thrill, grins and says he's not ready to quit. Talk about a guy who loves his job a bit too much. He vanishes in a blink. His sword slices through the air, red light splashing across the stone as it pierces Pelayer. A heartbeat later, Pelayer crumples, gasping, blood pooling. Julian watches, then chuckles, saying the Iron Fist nickname feels like a bad joke now. Pelayer sobs, begging not to die. A shadow looms, panting, red eyes blazing. A pale hand snags Julian's collar. Purple light swirls like moonlight on a lake. Eleanor's voice cuts through, calm but firm, that's enough, don't you think? His pupils flicker. The glow fades. A system ping chimes, open eyes effect deactivated. Julian drops to one knee, coughing hard. Purple light forms a shield around them. He stares at the ground, whispering, what have I done? Eleanor studies him, her gaze sharp. She says his aggression is showing its true colors now, and this trait of his is risky business. Like trading a dragon for a puppy, cute, but dangerous. Regaining his cool, Julian tells her Pelayer started it, and she even agreed Pelayer was out of line. He clicks his tongue, grumbling that she stayed quiet despite knowing the whole deal. Eleanor waves a hand lazily and points out she still let him pummel Pelayer into next week. Green magic spreads like seafoam over Pelayer, knitting his wounds. Julian tenses, realizing it's a binding spell, his body's locked in place. Great, now I'm a statue with a bad haircut. Eleanor glances at him, impressed by the fight. A faint smile plays on her lips, her eyes glowing soft pink as she casually suggests they team up, her charm magic humming. A system ping blips and vanishes. She watches him closely, saying there's nothing to lose by saying yes. Julian thinks it over, quietly admitting she might have a point. She starts to speak again, but he steps back, saying he needs time to think. Eleanor huffs, clicking her tongue, and gripes that her trade never works on him. Guess her charm's not charming enough for this guy. She turns to Pelayer, still bound and breathless, and asks how it felt if Julian seemed off. Pelayer, panting, says, no, Julian's just stronger. Eleanor nods, saying she figured as much. She adds that his memory loss was probably a fib and tells Pelayer not to spill to the other seniors, her charm eyes glowing. Pelayer stammers, of course not. She watches Julian slip down the alley and thinks, as expected, her trade fails with him for some reason. Later, under fading moonlight, Julian flexes his trembling fingers. He mulls over open eyes, how it saved him, how wild it is. Memories flood back, Pelayer's lunge, the recruiter's magic snaring him, cloaked figures cheering for blood. Talk about a fan club for chaos. He wonders what's next. Adrian's sharp grin flashes in his mind, he knows she'd skin him alive if he joined the Dawn Society. He'd be stuck here forever. But the recruiter's glint and the blade's other edge linger too. Joining might get him killed. He exhales, eyes closing. The truth settles in. As expected, the Dawn Society's his only shot. He presses a hand to his forehead, steadying his breath. It's decided, he'll join. Not because he's thrilled, but because it's the only road left. He plans to get in close, gather intel, and stop the demon god's resurrection. Dragging a hand down his face, he forces a lopsided grin that doesn't reach his eyes. Here's to saving the world, or at least faking it well. This, he thinks, is his ticket home. Moonlit stone towers loom, gentle monastery, home to the sun god church, the biggest faith on Rosenda's continent. Inside, novices whisper that Julian the atheist is here, probably to purge someone. Purge? Nah, I'm just here for the free snacks. He smirks quietly. A nervous priest steps up, asking what brings him to the monastery. Julian says he's here to see the High Abbot. The priest stumbles over words, saying no one told him Julian was coming. Footsteps echo. A nun bows, offering to lead him, and asks him to follow. Walking beside her, Julian thinks they sent a guide. Purple light ripples, and the nun's form shifts. She turns, smiling, and says he's earlier than she expected. She honestly thought he'd bail. Guess I'm not that flaky. He greets her as Miss Eleanor, noting she dropped her disguise spell right in front of him. Glancing at the violet-lit corridor, he says it's clever to hide the Dawn Society's base in a massive monastery. She tells him the Archbishop's waiting and to show some respect. He shrugs, saying he'll consider it. Respect's earned, not served on a platter. He thinks she's warier than last time, probably because the Dawn Society's leader is nearby. They enter a hall where robed members murmur, "It's Julian," confirming he's really back. A voice calls out, "Sir Julian?" He spots a masked man on the dais, supposedly the Archbishop but looking more like a farmer. Bet he's got a sacred pitchfork somewhere. This is Tanilon, chosen by a holy relic to lead the Dawn Society. Eleanor steps closer, saying he's in the Archbishop's presence and should kneel. Julian raises a hand, asking why he should. She faces him, saying he chose to join, so he needs to prove loyalty. He laughs, spreading his arms, saying he's not here for noble faith but for a partnership. Faith? I'd rather believe in a good sandwich. He thinks it's absurd to suddenly act pious and knows everyone here wants his status and influence, just as he needs their god's help. Hooded members grumble, calling him rude and arrogant, flaunting useless pride. The masked Archbishop raises a hand, saying, "Enough." He adds that if it's about a partnership, there's no need for tests, and dismisses everyone but Julian and Eleanor. The robed members reply, "Yes, Archbishop," whispering about what he's planning. He lets out a sharp pft, smirking with a raised eyebrow. The Archbishop chuckles, saying, "Well, you're just as cocky as the rumors claim. I like that spark, reminds me of my younger days, though I had better hair." He gestures with a flourish, urging, "Come along, I've got something worth seeing." The main character, MC, blinks, a mental question mark popping up like a cartoon bubble. What's this guy up to? The Archbishop strides toward a shadowy corridor, his voice low and reverent. Only bishops and higher ranks can pass this threshold. The MC tilts his head. Is that so? Indeed, the Archbishop replies, "This is where we keep the sacred relic." The MC's mind races. The sacred relic? That's gotta be it. Holding a flickering lamp, the Archbishop glances back, his eyes glinting. Why do you think I'm showing you this place? The MC shrugs. Why are you? The Archbishop's tone shifts, serious now. I don't want you leaving here unchanged. Letting you walk away now? That'd be like making you our enemy. And trust me, Julian allied with the Dawn Society? That'd be a plot twist even I couldn't predict. Julian raises an eyebrow. So, you're proposing we team up? The Archbishop nods. I'm granting you the rank of bishop. You'll wield the Dawn Society's full power. How's that for a promotion? Eleanor stiffens, her voice sharp. Your Excellency, why the sudden generosity? Did Julian slip you a coupon for loyalty? The Archbishop's gaze hardens. I'm giving the hero of the northern battlefield the respect he's earned. Got a problem with that? Eleanor starts to protest, but he cuts her off. How dare you question my decision? She lowers her head. My apologies. The Archbishop turns to Julian. Are you satisfied? Julian flashes a grin. Absolutely, Your Excellency. Thanks for the VIP pass. The masked Archbishop laughs, a deep, rumbling sound. Since you've come all this way, let's make it worth your while. No point in a field trip without a cool souvenir, right? A crimson liquid churns in a massive circular pit as they draw closer. The MC's eyes lock on a gleaming golden chalice. That's gotta be the sacred relic. The Archbishop's voice drops to a whisper. This is the star of the demon god, chosen for you. It can summon the latent power of the demon god Barbados into physical form. Pretty neat trick, huh? He lifts a dark, shimmering object from the red glow. Ever seen one of these? Julian narrows his eyes. A demon's horn. Exactly, the Archbishop says, his voice brimming with excitement. With this relic, we can craft demon horns, the power source of demons. Isn't that just wild? A faint image of a horn lingers in Julian's mind. I've never seen one made, but I get what it does. If I used it. He shudders at the thought. The Archbishop calls his name, snapping him back. Fascinating, isn't it? Creating a demon's horn? Julian nods slowly. Can it let me tap into a demon's power? Spot on, the Archbishop says, grinning like a kid showing off a new toy. You've come to the right place. This horn is the key to your dreams. He holds out the dark object. It's yours. Julian blinks. Just like that? What's next, a free tote bag? Archbishop Tanelrin's tone grows serious. Crafting a single horn demands the sacrifice of many demons. It's resource-heavy, but the power it grants? Worth every drop. He chuckles, a mischievous glint in his eye. I'm curious how strong it'll make you, Julian. Maybe strong enough to outshine the Sword Saint himself. Imagine the look on his face. Julian's mind churns. He knows exactly what this horn can do. It's not just borrowing demon power, it's becoming one. A chill runs down his spine. No way I want that. He wonders how to politely say, thanks, but no thanks. Eleanor steps in, her voice cautious. I think it's a bit premature to hand Julian the horn. He hasn't even signed the membership contract yet. Tanelrin echoes, too early, you say? Eleanor presses on. The horn is the core of our organization's power. The other members might not take kindly to this. They're not big on sharing toys. Tanelrin hums thoughtfully. Is that so? Julian's ears perk up. I can hear every word, you know. He clears his throat. I'll pass on the horn for now. That's not why I came here. I didn't sign up for the demon makeover package. Tanelrin nods, a faint smile playing on his lips. More considerate than I expected. Convincing Eleanor might take some extra charm, though. He pauses, then adds, Can I ask a favor? Julian smirks. What kind of favor? Need me to water your plants while you're away? Tanelrin's expression turns serious. Spirit stones, the key ingredient for the horn, come from the hearts of demons with at least 3 horns. They hold the remnants of the demon god's will. Bring me those stones. Shouldn't be too hard for you. Julian frowns. Hunting 3-horned demons without imperial orders? That'd raise eyebrows, even for me. Tanelrin's voice drops to a conspiratorial whisper, tinged with red menace. Don't worry. The Dawn Society has that covered. A few days later, Julian sits on a train, staring out the window. What in the world just happened? He's now a bishop in the Dawn Society, handed the title like a party favor. And they already gave me a mission to hunt a three-horned demon. They must have people in the imperial court, too. He shakes his head. This isn't some secret club, it's practically a shadow empire. Trouble doesn't even begin to cover it. Heron, sitting across from him, grins. Lucky we've got trains linking cities, huh? Beats riding a horse for days. Julian forces a smile. Oh, right. Forgot about this guy. You're heading to Bernin too, Heron? Yup, Heron replies. Bernin's hosting the Sun God Church's Ascension Festival. I'm repping the Kreipart family. You should check out the festival once your mission's done. They've got food stalls that'll make your mouth water. Julian nods. If I've got time, sure. Let's just agree and move on. An announcement crackles through the train, now arriving at Bernin. Heron stands. That's my cue. Catch you later, Julian. See you, Heron, Julian replies, then pauses as Heron adds, oh, and don't poke Margrave Ornanal. He was tight with the Highlands family, you know, the one you turned into history. He's not your biggest fan. Julian sighs quietly. Great, another headache. He steadies himself, thinking, I'm just here to slay demons. Shouldn't have to deal with Ornanal. In a dimly lit office, Margrave Ornanal sits with steepled fingers, his voice firm. Please delay your mission. Julian tilts his head, confused. Sorry? Ornanal continues, the city's restricting access to the Pillen Forest for Sun Church members preparing for the Ascension Festival. Julian's jaw tightens. The three-horned demon's in that forest. If it shows up, your festival's toast. Ornanal leans back. Has the demon appeared yet? No, but. Then we wait, Ornanal cuts in. The Ascension Festival is Bernin's pride. We won't disrupt it for a demon that's playing hide and seek. Julian's expression cools. He's not listening. That demon could crash the party any second. Margrave Ornal announces that the festival is set for next week and encourages Julian to savor it, chuckling that even someone as cool-headed as Julian must find joy in a party. Bet you can't resist a good festival dance, he teases. A small voice pipes up, Daddy. Julian turns, letting out a curious hmm? Margrave Ornal freezes and barks, Trina. Little Trina peeks around the corner, her eyes twinkling like stars, and exclaims, Who's this guy? He's super handsome. Julian muses to himself that she must be Sir Ornal's daughter, sharp kid, great taste in heroes. Margrave Ornal rushes forward, shouting, Stay back, Trina. Come here now. Julian, calm as ever, wonders if the Margrave really thinks he'd pick a fight with a kid. What's next, accusing me of stealing her candy, he thinks with a smirk. A faint system glow outlines the father and daughter, flashing a notice, color of protective fear. Julian wraps up the conversation, suggesting they resume another time, and steps out into the cool night. Margrave Ornal scoops Trina into his arms in the hallway, holding her close. Julian lets out a quiet, phew. Outside, his subordinates hustle toward him. One calls, Sir Julian. Another asks eagerly, How'd it go? Julian replies that Margrave Ornal was stubborn as a mule and that the mission's delay couldn't be avoided. A subordinate blinks, surprised, and asks if they should pull back the shut-eyes unit stationed in the forest. Julian raises a hand, shaking his head, and says to leave them in place. The subordinate stammers, what? Julian gazes at the bustling streets, decked out for the festival, and declares that the celebration won't go as planned. Looks like the party's getting a demonic +1, he quips. A subordinate's eyes widen as he asks if that means what they fear it does. Julian's stare remains fixed on the city, adorned for a festivity he knows will soon unravel. He explains that burn-in is where most players first encounter a three-horned demon. He stresses that such a beast isn't just strong, it's a walking disaster. Rubbing his chin, he notes that the festival might soon spiral into chaos. Talk about a party pooper, he adds lightly. He breaks down the horn system. The more horns a demon has, the deadlier it gets. From 3 horns up, each earns a unique name and a special power. He gives an example: Hamlon, a parasitic creature draped in earthy reds, cloaked in a furry mantle, its eyes blazing with inner fire. Like a campfire with an attitude, Julian jests. He describes Hamlon's tactics: it doesn't just attack, it infests. Any area it claims twists into its personal stronghold, no longer a place but a trap. Entrances shift, exits vanish, and the land decays into a toxic mire. Adventurers who wander and stumble out, panicked, their bodies breaking down. Some collapse in minutes, and even those who escape aren't safe. Hamlon wages a mental war beyond its borders, shattering minds as easily as it poisons soil. It's like the demons playing hide-and-seek, but with nightmares, Julian remarks. He notes that these effects make the area nearly impossible to cleanse. The scene shifts to a cozy inn. Julian sets down a broad mug, his eyes narrowing. He reasons that Hamlon is likely finishing its nest. He predicts Sir Ornal will call for him soon. A guard bursts in, breath puffing in the chilly air, announcing that Sir Ornal needs Julian at the mansion right away. Julian notes the urgency, and the guard, flustered, apologizes for interrupting his meal. "No worries, I wasn't that hungry for mystery stew," Julian quips. At the mansion, Julian arrives, already anticipating the news, his face unreadable. Across the room, Margrave Ornal trembles. Seated rigidly behind his desk, Sir Ornal speaks haltingly, revealing that his daughter, Trina, hasn't woken since last night. Even the city's top healer is stumped. He adds that other children in Burnin are slipping into unexplained comas. Julian hums softly, piecing it together, and states aloud that it's already started. Sir Ornal leaps up, his voice quivering as he demands if Julian doesn't find it odd that a healthy child could suddenly fall unconscious. Julian, composed, asks what the Margrave is suggesting. Sir Ornal, sweat beading on his brow, insists it's no disease, it's a demon's doing. Julian pauses, then confirms it, stating the cause is almost certainly Hamlon, lurking in the Pune forest. He explains that the beast plants seeds in living beings, turning them into loyal puppets. The infection spares adults but is deadly for children. He warns that for Trina, time may already be running out. Sir Ornal stumbles back, shouting, "That's impossible." Then he lunges forward, dropping to his knees, begging Julian to slay the demon immediately. He cries that the Ascension Festival means nothing now, only Trina's life matters. Julian glances down at the Margrave and notes dryly, "You switch tunes faster than a bard at a tavern." He then asks pointedly if Ornal truly wants to save her. Sir Ornal responds instantly, vowing he'll do anything. Julian's eyes sharpen. He repeats, "anything," and presses further, would the Margrave risk endangering Burnin itself? Sir Ornal stiffens, clutching a folded cloth, his breath shallow. After a long pause, he lowers his head and declares he'll bear full responsibility for any fallout. Julian nods once. "Then I'll take down Hamlon," he says. Sir Ornal gasps a desperate, "Thank you." A wide view sweeps over a lush field. Workers dash across it, lugging sloshing buckets. They splash fuel over soil, stone, and wood. Mud mixes with the slick liquid as it spills. An aide approaches Julian, reporting that preparations are done. The aide hesitates, glancing at the sun-dappled trees, and softly asks if this is really necessary. "This forest is practically begging for a picnic," he murmurs. Julian replies that ignoring a known threat would be foolish. He turns to the aide, who lowers his voice and asks if Julian truly plans to burn the forest down. Julian confirms it's not just a clearing, it's total destruction. "In the game, this was the best way to roast Hamlon," he says with a wry grin. The aide mutters that Sir Ornal might lose his temper.
Julian reassures him, the Margrave has chosen safety over celebration.
No festival's worth a demon crash, he adds.
Julian raises a hand and gives the order, start it. Torches flare with a snap. Voices shout, light it up. Burn it clean.
Flames surge across the soaked ground, devouring the brush. Panel by panel, the fire spreads, vivid orange and blinding white. Within the smoke and searing heat, something stirs. A pair of red eyes glows open. The burning thickets twist, forming a shape. A massive figure rises from the inferno, thorns jutting from its limbs, its gaze like molten glass. Hamlin's silhouette emerges, framed by flames. Jagged lettering flashes as the beast unleashes a bone-chilling roar. Talk about a dramatic entrance. Julian thinks. From within the blaze, the demon bellows. Nearby, Shut Eye's unit members freeze, then spring into action, shouting, time to fight.
But Julian raises a hand, ordering them to stand down. He declares he'll face the demon alone.
The agents halt, stunned.
One stammers, you're taking on a three-horned demon solo? Julian flashes a faint, crooked smile.
As he draws his sword, firelight dances across the blade, glinting over his uniform's folds, flames roaring, licking the air, casting an orange glow across a scorched forest. Embers dance in the wind as Julian strides forward, his boots crunching on charred ground. His sword gleams in his hand, grip tight, shoulders squared, like a predator closing in. The air's thick with heat and tension. He steps into a clearing, and there it is, the Hamlon monster, a hulking beast with eyes blazing fury. Julian's lips curl into a sly grin behind his hand. The creature's massive arm swings down, smashing the earth where he stood moments ago, but Julian's too quick. He leaps back, light on his feet, and taunts, Hamlin, your efforts are useless. The beast's rage spikes, its growl shaking the ground. Julian draws his moonlight sword, and a blue aura hums around the blade, sharp and alive. He charges, slashing so close the monster flinches. These flames have weakened you, he says, voice dripping with confidence. You should vanish beneath my sword. The beast's eyes narrow, and suddenly, beams of light erupt around it. A sickly sweet scent hits Julian, he covers his nose, realizing it's Hamlin's pollen. His system blares a warning, hypnosis and convulsions. It assaults the mind. He curses under his breath, damn, I forgot about that. But then he smirks, good thing I've got more up my sleeve. The system chimes again, confirming his resistance to the mental attack. The monster freezes, stunned. A dense aura flares around Julian, his arrogance, two-faced, and cold-faced traits all kicking in. He thinks to himself, a lowly demon's mental strike could never touch me. The beast roars, but Julian's eyes flash blood red, a wicked smile spreading. What could drive a madman matter, he asks, almost laughing. Then he charges, unleashing a slash so fierce it splits the air. The explosion rips through the monster, cleaving it in two. A glowing red crystal tumbles from its remains. Julian exhales, muttering, finally over. His subordinates rush up, concern in their voices. Are you unharmed? They ask. He gives them a cold glance, then softens. I'm fine, he says, brushing them off. The scene shifts to Orinal's post, where a man stands trembling, staring at the burning forest. Julian approaches, calm and composed. Thanks for your support during the extermination, he says. The royal family will praise your bravery. Then he shifts gears. Has your daughter awakened? Orinal's voice shakes as he replies, she's slowly recovering. Julian smiles, pulling out a necklace. Give this to her, he says, handing it over. Orinal's eyes narrow. What is it? He asks. Julian's tone stays even. A necklace made from Hamlin's fragments. Orinal's shock is palpable. Why? He demands. Julian explains, cool as ever, your daughter's magical power made her the first affected by Hamlin's pollen. With her S-rank aptitude, she deserves a magical item of this rarity. Orinal's suspicion deepens. You've no reason to treat me kindly, he presses. Julian shrugs. I value talented mages. Orinal's not buying it. You've got ulterior motives, he accuses. Julian's response is smooth, almost too smooth. It's courtesy for your cooperation, nothing more. Orinal nods, but his thoughts churn. He must know of my ties to the clan he destroyed. He's sure every polite gesture hides a scheme. Julian wraps up, thanking Orinal again for his help before walking off into the fading light. Orinal stays behind, staring at the necklace in his hand, muttering, he didn't ask for anything, just walked away in silence. He steps into his daughter's room, where she's sitting up, looking stronger. You look healthier, he says, a soft smile breaking through. He hands her the necklace. A recovery gift. Her face lights up, cheeks flushing. It's beautiful, she says, eyes wide. Orinal pats her head gently. You like it? She nods eagerly. He sighs, relieved. The necklace seems harmless, for now. Picture this, a father, heart heavy with guilt, watches his daughter Tina laugh, her joy a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. He's made a choice, family over vengeance, and it's eating at him. He knows the noble council needs to hear about this, about how their hesitation to exterminate, all to follow the chairman's plan to cage Julian, nearly cost him everything. No more alliances, he vows, whispering a prayer for forgiveness under his breath. Cut to a train rattling through a shadowed countryside, bound for the capital. Julian's in a cramped carriage, clutching a small wooden box. Inside? Hamlin's stone, the demon's heart. It looks plain, but the dark energy pulsing from it screams malice. He's torn. Hand it to the Dawn Association to win their trust? Or is there a smarter play? The crewman's voice cuts through his thoughts, docking soon in Landrian. Julian mutters to himself, I need to get to the capital first, hide this thing before it brings trouble. Then, soft footsteps. He looks up, and there's Renee, of all people, from Hayden's faction. Their eyes lock, and the air turns thick with tension. Just his luck, her seat's right next to his. Cursing inwardly, he slips the box into his bag, praying she doesn't notice. Forcing a smile, he says, fate brought us together, it seems. She frowns, looks away, clearly not thrilled. He catches her reaction and teases, you must be wondering why I'm here. She admits, I am. He leans back, casual as can be, and says, business in Bernardine. You, though, you look like you're headed somewhere warmer. He nods at her bag, where a bit of clothing peeks out, testing her. She brushes it off, and he apologizes smoothly, didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. It's a dodge, and it works, her focus shifts, away from the box. But then she snaps, Julian. His heart skips. Her eyes narrow, sharp with suspicion. This feels too coincidental. Are you following me? He plays it cool, feigning surprise. Me? The royal secretary set this trip. Maybe you're the one watching me. That throws her off, she stammers, protesting. He smirks, leaning in. No need to overreact. She turns away, cheeks flushed, while he mutters to himself, that was too close. I need to hide this jewel somewhere safe. Bitterness creeps in, he never should have taken the ruby out to begin with. Renee's voice cuts through again, cold as ice. That jewel box seems rather important to you. He flinches, stomach dropping. She presses, you keep touching it endlessly. His mind races, does she know? He stalls, then mumbles, it's just an ordinary jewel box. His voice betrays him, shaky, and her eyes narrow further. She shifts gears, tossing out, living so indulgently must be tiring. I heard your sword requires gemstones. Relief washes over him, she hasn't cracked it. He forces a grin, leaning back. More jewels are always better. The train rumbled along, and Julian was mid-motion, easing a small box back into his suitcase with the care of someone handling a live bomb. His fingers lingered on the clasp when the train lurched to a dead stop. He bit back a curse, muttering to himself, why now, of all times? The overhead speaker crackled, announcing the halt was due to heavy rain. Just then, the box slipped from his grip, hitting the floor with a thud. His heart stopped as he watched a gleaming gemstone roll free, glinting under the dim train lights. Renee, sharp-eyed and close by, bent down and scooped it up. Her gaze was ice-cold, pinning him in place. Please return it to me, Julian said, voice tight, his mind racing. She knows. She has to know it's a gemstone. What's she going to do? Renee turned the stone over in her hand, her expression unreadable. It seems to lack vitality, she said coolly. A pity for someone so enamored with jewels to not know how to cherish them. Without another word, she dropped the stone back into the box and handed it to him. Julian's breath slipped out in a quiet rush as he took it, his hands unsteady. Maybe the Hayden faction doesn't know what this is yet, he thought, tucking the box away again. His pulse was still hammering. This encounter probably shaved 10 years off my life, he muttered under his breath, half joking, half serious. Good thing an emotionless face comes in handy at times like these. The train stayed still, the rain drumming outside. When it finally cleared, the silence felt heavier than the storm. Julian, desperate to shake off the tension, forced a light tone. This train's more comfortable than a carriage, at least, he said, shifting in his seat. Though sitting too long is still tiring. He was rambling now, anything to keep his nerves in check. Renee's response was a dry jab. Traveling with you is like being in hell. Julian tilted his head, flashing a strained smile. I'm simply happy to have someone to talk to, he said, though his thoughts were a mess. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. A servant approached, bowing to Renee. Your carriage is ready to take you to the academy dormitory, he said. She nodded. Thank you. Julian seized the moment, eager to escape. Time to get out of here, he thought, raising a hand in a quick wave. I'll take my leave first, he said, turning to go. Wait, Renee called after him, her voice sharp enough to freeze him mid-step. His stomach twisted. Did she figure out the jewel? What is it? He asked, voice betraying a hint of dread. She paused, her eyes steady on his. I wanted to thank you for what you did in the slum district, she said. It's not personal gratitude, but thanks from one swordsman to another. Julian exhaled, the knot in his chest loosening slightly. It was nothing, he said, waving it off. We're both followers of Hayden, after all. Renee shook her head. You've already been expelled. He turned away, a wry smile tugging at his lips. You remain as cold as ever, he said, starting to walk off. Behind him, Renee watched him go, then turned to the servant. Proceed, she said. The servant nodded, and the moment passed, heavy with unspoken truths. It's a tense morning at Shy's headquarters, the air thick with unfinished business. Captain Orden, all business and barely contained frustration, fixes Julian with a pointed look. Do you like Bernardine? She asks, cutting straight to it. Julian's lips twist into a dry smile. I wouldn't go that far, he says, his voice cool, but his eyes drift to the table, stacked high with papers, a chaotic mountain of bureaucracy. What's all this? He asks, sensing trouble. Ordwin groans, practically tearing at her hair. It's all your fault, she snaps, her voice sharp enough to slice through the room. This paperwork, it's piled up beyond reason. Julian steps closer, peering at the mess, and throws out a jab, half smirking. With so much paperwork, Bernardine must be popular indeed. Inside, he's chuckling, thinking he sounds like the old Julian, stirring the pot just to see how she'll react, daring her to snap. Ordwin's not amused. She whirls on him, eyes blazing.
Do you even know why all this work is piled up? Julian laughs, leaning into the provocation. Must be due to your negligence, he says, tossing the blame back. That sets her off. It's absolutely your fault for setting fire to the pine forest, she yells, her voice practically shaking the walls. Julian raises his hands, mock innocence. Calm down, he says. Shut Eyes members are allowed to act on judgment in the field. But Ordwin's not having it. She clutches her head, muttering, I was foolish for even asking. Then she lays it out. Most of those letters are warnings from the Sunurch, furious because the pine forest is sacred to them. The Imperial Court will handle it, she adds, but thanks to you, my workload's doubled. Julian shrugs, his tone flat. You should see it that way. It's like pouring oil on a fire, her glare could burn holes through him. He feels it, her sharpness cutting deeper than he'd like, and though he doesn't say it, he's sorry. Just a little. Ordwin holds up a few letters, her voice steady but pointed. One of these is a proposal sent directly to you, she says. A request to give a speech at V Academy. Julian takes the letter, scanning it, his brow furrowing. This contains a new clause I haven't seen before, he mutters, his mind racing. Then she drops a name that hits like a thunderbolt, Gentle Monastery. The words drag him back to a memory, a conversation with Tenelin. I'm not foolish enough to hunt the three-horned demon without imperial orders, Julian had told him. That'd be too suspicious. Tenelin had been smooth, reassuring. We'll handle everything, he'd promised. But now, that promise feels like a noose tightening. Ordwin keeps going, her voice like a blade. The Sun Church sees you as a thorn in their side, and yet you submitted a proposal to them. Her words send a chill down his spine, she's too sharp, seeing through the cracks in his armor, sensing something he's been trying to bury. Julian grits his teeth, his mind spinning. The cult leader had planned this from the start, sending that report straight to the Shut Eyes unit. Julian and Commander Ordwin are locked in a heated argument when the door flies open. Lazarus storms in, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. The royal secretary demands to know what happened in Bernardine. His sudden arrival startles them both, like a thunderclap in a quiet storm. It's the worst possible moment, and you can feel the weight of it. Julian's face twists into an awkward grimace, but inside, he's thanking the stars. Lazarus just saved him from a verbal battlefield. Realizing he's stumbled into something heavy, Lazarus backpedals, turning to Ordwin. My apologies, Commander. Should I come back later? Ordwin, worn out from the fight, just sighs. No need, she says, her voice heavy with exhaustion. She turns to Julian. Go. And take your documents. Julian, barely hiding his relief, nods. We'll meet again, he says, and bolts out with Lazarus, the tension unraveling behind him like a cut rope. As they walk, Lazarus can't help himself. Is it true, he asks, eyes wide. Did you really take down the three-horned demon gods single-handedly? The capital's buzzing with it. Julian gives a faint smile, brushing it off. Nothing worth mentioning, he says, but his mind's elsewhere. That fight nearly killed him, and the memory still rattles his bones. But it's not the demon that's gnawing at him. It's a letter from the Dawn cult, far more dangerous than any beast. Julian stops Lazarus outside the secretariat. Wait here, he says, his tone sharp. Alone, he opens the letter, expecting a trap. At first, it's disappointingly ordinary, too ordinary. The Dawn cult doesn't play simple games. Then, as if on cue, black mist seeps from the parchment, coiling into a massive, pitch-black serpent. Its voice is low, chilling. The Archbishop wishes Bishop Julian to come to the district. The letter's laced with sound-masking magic, and the phrasing screams Eleanor. They're after the demon stone of the three-horned god. But how did they know exactly when he'd return to the capital? That detail was locked tight, known only to Ordwin and the Secretariat.
The precision sends a shiver down his spine. With no choice, Julian heads to the Dawn Cult's district. The air there is heavy, ice tracking his every step. He forces a strained smile, but the scrutiny makes his skin crawl. Bishop Eleanor appears, her presence cutting through the crowd. "Everyone's eyes on me," Julian mutters. "It's unnerving." Eleanor laughs lightly. "Nothing to be done about it. Your aura keeps most at bay." She sheds her disguise and gestures for him to follow. As they walk, her tone shifts to admiration. "Defeating the three-horned demon god, burning down the pine forest, hearing it from your mouth would be an honor." Julian's flattered but cuts to the point. "Your letters are too blatant," he says, voice low. "It's risky." Eleanor waves it off. "My cipher magic ensures no one can decode it." Julian's not convinced. "There's always a chance of failure." "Don't do it again." She smirks, amused. "How do you plan to stay in touch, then?" Julian's smile is sharp. "From now on, direct meetings only." Eleanor's caught off guard but doesn't push. "You know where to find me," she says lightly, though inside, she's wondering if he's testing her. There's no way he could know her true identity, right? Next stop, Archbishop Tenerin. The man greets Julian with booming enthusiasm. "An honor to finally see you. Show me the three-horned demon stone." Julian keeps his cool, smiling politely. "I didn't bring any demon stones." Tenerin's face sours. "Where are they?" "You slew the demon god yourself." Julian doesn't flinch. "They're with the royal secretariat." The room shifts. Tenerin's fury rises, his voice sharp. "Confirm that." Julian holds his ground. "The stones are with the royal secretariat." Whispers ripple through the bishops. "He's enraged," one mutters. "Is Julian mad?" Tenerin's hand glows with a red aura, his voice a snarl. "Explain yourself." Julian, reluctant, forces out a justification. "Sometimes, you retreat one step to advance three." But the room's buzzing with resentment. To them, this is betrayal, and betrayal in the Dawn cult means punishment. Julian turns to the furious bishops, a mocking smile on his lips. "Your thinking is as shallow as I expected." The outrage explodes. "What do you mean by that?" they shout. Julian sighs, laying it out. "If I wanted to betray you, I wouldn't be standing here. I gave the demon stone to the royal secretariat to use the Empire's intelligence network. It's the first documented three-horned demon stone. If they uncover its power, they'll hunt for more. And when they find one, we'll trace the rest." Tenerin grudgingly nods, seeing the logic, but the other bishops aren't swayed. To them, giving up a divine artifact is heresy. Julian presses on, his smile sharp. "There's another reason. Since my victory, rumors are flying, pillar of shut eyes, next sacred sword, hero. With so many eyes on me, especially our enemies, including you, Archbishop, this is our chance to expose who's scheming against the cult." Groans and accusations erupt. One bishop shouts for his arrest. Julian's hand rests on his sword, a blue aura flickering around the blade. "Do you really want to face me?" The tension spikes until Tenerin roars, "Who authorized this?" But before he can restore order, a reckless bishop lunges. Julian moves like lightning, parrying and driving his blade into the man's abdomen. Blood pools on the floor as the bishop collapses. Julian stands tall, his expression calm but unyielding. "If you want answers, I'll give you one. The man behind this was my former master, the Holy Sword Haydenwright." The name hits the room like a thunderbolt, and Tenerin's face twists in shock.